Welcome, everyone. I now call the February 4th, 2025 regular City Council meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. At this point, we'll take a moment to take roll call of the council members by position number. Please say here when the city clerk calls your name.
Thank you. Councilmember Zorns?
Here.
Mayor Thompson?
Here.
Councilmember Alders?
Here.
Councilmember Kurd?
Here.
Councilmember Mankey?
Here.
Councilmember Dodd?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Present.
All present. Thank you.
Before we continue with the rest of the agenda, I'd like to reiterate some guidelines. For remote meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently, and mute your microphone when not speaking. First up on our agenda tonight is meeting agenda approval. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to public engagement opportunities. You can apply for a board or commission. You can volunteer in our community by serving on an advisory body. Apply online through February 21st. The Climate Action Plan survey is up. We're creating our first climate action plan to reduce emissions and prepare for climate change. You can take a short survey to inform our work. That's at engagebothell.com. That survey is open through February 21st. Next up is public comment. The city has accepted public comment in writing as well as accepted signups for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all city council members and are part of the record. When the clerk calls your name, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please note that council will receive your input, but we do not engage in discussion of these topics. Staff will make note of items requiring follow-up. City clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. We had no written comments submitted tonight. We do have one person signed up to speak, and that is Deborah Christensen. Deborah, as you're stepping to the podium, I will say that you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and the light will be green at the start. It will turn yellow. It will start blinking at 1 minute left, and at 30 seconds, it'll turn yellow. There's a microphone there. If you can just press that button on it. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. My name is Deborah Christensen, and I'm a resident of Bothell and a voter. I work in Seattle as a nurse practitioner. I normally attend the council meetings by Zoom, but I thought for the first time I should actually start coming in person. I'm here to addressing the council today because of the many executive orders from President Trump. Our great country may have the most powerful military and the largest GDP in the world, but our real power is here in each city, town council, and neighborhood. When taking office, the members of this council took an oath or affirmation for the faithful performance of their duties. This includes honoring and upholding the Constitution. I want to remind the council of 3 parts to the Constitution. The first is that our government is designed to be slow, thoughtful, fact-based, and deliberate. In other words, inefficient. Second, that government process that I just mentioned is the antithesis of violence, threats, and intimidations. And then the third is all are guaranteed the right to free speech, freedom of the press, freedom from government interference in our religion, and peaceful assembly. These rights apply to everyone. Today, the council will be discussing the future of Bothell, new ordinances, and city projects. There are already many disagreements that I've watched, and it's safe to say that none of us agree with each other on just about everything, but that's okay. None of us have significant power in Washington, D.C., but we do have the power to create the kind of city and neighborhood we want to live in. We get to decide if we will follow the rule of law or violence when we disagree. My hope is that everyone present will continue to choose the rule of law and continue with the great American experiment. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all I have. Is there anybody else in the audience that doesn't look that way that wishes to speak? If so, please step to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes. That is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, City Clerk. Next up is reports, and we're going to start with the City Manager report. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, City Council. We do have 2 staff briefings tonight, but first I wanted to just give a timely, quick winter weather update for the community to be aware of. With the first snowfall of 2025 taking place yesterday and more snow in the forecast over the coming days, just wanted to share a brief reminder to the community that we have inclement weather information that you can look to on the city's website, bothellwa.gov. The winter weather site gets promoted to front page status during events that require it, so it does come back every time you need it. It's like Mary Poppins. And we list on that page current road conditions, cold weather shelter locations for both King and Snohomish counties, contact information for power providers, and a number of other frequently asked questions. So as people wake up to white on the road or ice, it's a good place to look to get a reminder of what the current conditions are and as people are planning out their day. Next up, we have, as I mentioned, 2 staff presentations. And first off is on your agenda as the LEEDA Trilogy Award presentation to the Police Department. This is a presentation from the Law Enforcement Executive Development Association, and it is being presented due to the completion from staff of 3 comprehensive training programs designed to enhance leadership skills and decision-making, ethics, and communication. Just as a reminder, the City Council's 2040 vision for Bothell opens with a statement that many of us are familiar with, which is for a day or a lifetime, no matter who you are or where you're from, Bothell is everyone's hometown. But that statement continues on in the vision with some themes that are relevant to this award, including that we care for each other, we respect each other, and we work together to ensure that everyone feels safe and welcome. Further, it concludes with, we grow and learn together to meet today's needs with an eye toward the future. And with that sentiment, I know that we can all applaud our police department for living out that part of the vision, which is continuously learning, growing, and making sure to bring the best available teaching and theories into how they lead. And our command staff is here with us tonight for after a presentation, and just always grateful for their leadership and how they care for the Bothell community. So with that, though, we'd like to hear a little bit more about what the accomplishment means and put it in context. And I'm pleased to introduce the past president of the FBI LEEDA group, Ozzy Kenovich, and he is here tonight to present the award to the chief. Ozzy, please come forward.
Mayor, Council, it's a pleasure to be here today. You need to understand the amount of work that actually goes into accomplishing what your police department has accomplished. They have most of their command, or all their command staff, some of their sergeants, and that have gone through the training. It's 3 40-hour classes. And for an agency to get that done is pretty special. I've been involved with LEEDA since 2007. I brought the LEEDA Corps group into Spokane County when I was a sheriff in 2007. We've been having those and hosting those training classes in Spokane since that time. In the last 18 years, I've watched LEEDA grow. It's now internationally recognized. We're actually developing leadership training at the international level. And there are many agencies, especially on the East Coast, that you don't even get considered to be a sergeant unless you have the Trilogy in your resume. So what your staff and what your agency has done is fairly phenomenal. We don't give too many agency trilogies away, and Bothell sits in a very special place right now. So I'm very proud of them. You should be very proud of them. And with that, I'd like to bring Chief Suberlit up and present him with the Trilogy. Congratulations, Chief.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Somebody's going to come up to the microphone and say a few words, right?
Thank you, Chief.
Well, I can't really beat the city manager's standards intro, but I will say, as an organization, one of the things that I identified early on is we had a pretty large vacuum when it came to our leadership development in not just our organization, but nationally. And FBI LEEDA is one of the premier institutions out there for leadership development. And it is truly the gold standard. It's FBI Academy Light. So I don't know if anybody knows, the FBI Academy is more than an 8-week commitment that we actually have to send people to back east. And for us, we managed to get everybody from our MPOs, which are 2-stripers, on up to myself through at least 2 levels of the FBI Trilogy training. All the executives were required to go through this. We had a total of 13 of our employees make it all the way through the Trilogy. And again, I think we're one of the few in the state with that many that have made it through. So I'm very proud of the men and women at the police department, and I appreciate the support that I received for the city manager, because it wasn't cheap either. So thank you.
Anyway, Councilmember Zorns?
I just want to say, you just never cease to amaze, and I'm just very, very proud and very, very grateful for our men and women in blue. Keep doing the fine work.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you. I was very happy, very glad to see this. I also want to say on record, we have Captain Rogers now over here. So I just want to say congratulations officially on the record.
Councilmember Dodd?
Thank you. Same thing. And I want to call out I appreciate the note that it's 3 40-hour classes. Your command staff and your sergeants already work a lot because you don't really get to schedule when you're needed in the city. So to be able to take the time and really intentionally do that work means a lot. And I appreciate how much it shows in the work that your team does in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Curd?
Thank you. Congratulations to the whole department and the city of Bothell for this. I think it's a testament to the cohesion of the department that you're willing to invest in training and invest in yourselves. And it shows in how you help our community too. So thank you so much. Really proud of you.
Councilmember Alders?
Thank you. I'll just acknowledge that this is a big commitment of time and effort, and it's also a commitment to your values as a department and the way that you choose to lead in this community. And so thank you, and thank you to all the command staff for participating as well. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mankey?
In the words of the great Charlie Munger, I have nothing to add. Yes, thank you. I echo my fellow council members' comments. Thank you for leading your team and for making your team leaders. It matters in our city. It matters all the way down to the front lines. So thank you for taking the time to do this. I know it's very busy in the department.
I will echo all of that as well. And I just thank you so much, not just for what you do, but for individually and collectively who you are. Like, being able to have a police department that I feel incredibly proud of is such a blessing in this role. And every time we have a council meeting and I see y'all, it reminds me of that. And I just feel appreciated because you are. And, you know, we see most of you guys on a more regular basis, but anytime I interact with some of the rank and file and some of the folks on the street, the culture you're building is obvious, and I have appreciated all my interactions with them as well. So just I've never been the mayor of any other city, so like I don't know if this is normal or not, but from the conversations that I hear when I'm out in the greater elected community, it's not. And so just know that we really appreciate you. We don't take you for granted, and we're not just saying nice things because you got an award and you're here, though that's part of it, I'm sure. But like for real, above and beyond that, thank you. We really appreciate you.
Well, thank you, and I'll just close out with I'm very blessed for working with such amazing people over at the police department. They make my life easy. And I would also like to thank, again, City Manager Stannard and for his leadership and guidance in this. He's been very supportive, as well as the City Council, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'm glad you don't have other experience as mayor, but I will tell you that the testimony that I rely on is of my 2 children who, after any community event, frequently are calling out the fact that their interaction with our police department is unlike anything they've experienced. So I think that counts for something. Our last update tonight is on the state legislative calendar, which is in your packet. I know you're all very well aware of the fact that we are in our 4th week of the legislative session down in Olympia, and things are moving quickly. This is the upfront season of where there's a lot of ideas and bills floating about. The City Council gives great direction to the staff through the adoption of your legislative agenda and a set of your legislative policy manual. As we are making our way through this session, wanted to bring you some quick updates on both, and then also turn things over to the council for any discussion or questions you may have. To lead us through, I am going to turn things over to our Deputy City Manager, Tony Call.
Thank you, City Manager Cupp. So as City Manager Stannard mentioned, we're here to have a conversation, council discussion, observations, interests, things that you've observed, additional feedback you want to give to staff, either through the policy manual or through your legislative update, to make sure that we are delivering on your policy manual as we head towards Olympia. As City Manager Stannard just mentioned, we are in the 4th week. Legislative session convened on January 13th. First cutoff is in 2.5 weeks at the end of week 6, which is February 21st. So until then, we're going to continue to see the constant every day more bills to read. So we are working our best to get through them today. So I'm going to take just a couple of minutes and run through your legislative agenda items, the top 5 priorities you have and where we are in the state ledge with you with those items, and then turn it over to you for discussion, conversation, any further direction you'd like to give us as we continue to fulfill your mission as we head down to the state legislature. So the first item on the list was the preservation of the Shelton View Forest for recreational purposes. Staff continues to work with the state legislature on preserving Shelton View Forest. Recently, we had a good meeting when Councilmember Alderks and Councilmember Curd were down in Olympia with us last week, and we have been encouraged to submit an application for the trust land transfer process, which would allow it to be kept as a natural area or a park area. Not sure how well we're going to compete at that, but getting it on the list is very important. So staff is already working on that transmittal. It will not be due till after this biennium is ended, so probably sometime late summer is when that application would get sent in. The second item on your list is the Woodcrest Utility Improvement Project. We are requesting $1.9 million to complete that project. Paperwork's ready to get submitted. We're going to continue to track it as it moves through the budget process. We still have many weeks left before we're going to see any results there. The third thing on your list was a multimodal connection. Over the next 3 biennium, the city is requesting $20 million for the implementation of the citywide bike plan. As a starter to that, there is a request for $400,000 to complete the design for the 102nd Avenue used path. So that is already been submitted. And because the state, as we all know, has some funding deficits in the transportation area, I'm sure you've seen them in the newspaper, other places, the goal is it's possible that funding level will be able to be accomplished without new revenue. So that's on the list. One of the most active areas of the legislative session is removing barriers to housing construction. You have very clear direction for us to continue to take bold action to eliminate barriers to housing construction. So as you look through the packet that we send out on Mondays, you will notice there's a lot of support, check marks for areas such as transit-oriented development, minimum parking requirements, tenant protections for renters, both renters and manufactured home communities, small neighborhood businesses, and streamlining development regs, among others that are out there. So that has been a very active area this legislative session. And if you go out and look at the bills in the packets, there's lots of bills related to housing out there. The last item on your legislative priority was more like a future forecast, more like a thing that say, hey, it's coming in the future, was the Bothell Way Multimodal Improvements Project. we are currently letting them know that that's coming, and we'll be looking for an ask of that in the future. We have also asked for some timing on some shifting of some grant money this year to continue to allow that project to move forward. So that's kind of the high level of where your major priorities are. I am not going to review the policy manual and all the pieces that could be there. That would take us forever. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to all of you for any discussion, observations, areas that you'd like staff to focus on, et cetera. So Mayor, back to you.
Thank you. Councilmember Curd.
Thanks. I just wanted to give a shout out to our team for the great time that we had in Olympia with so many different legislators. We didn't just meet with our own district legislators, which at this point in the season, it's kind of surprising that we got meetings with people outside of our district. And so kudos to the team and our consultant lobbyist who is able to navigate those schedules. I think going forward, we should focus some of our efforts doing legislative outreach with our own district, because I don't think that we're going to be able to get more meetings and so forth. I'm wondering how many of us are going to be at the AWC Action Days too. That's another opportunity that we might be able to explore scheduling meetings. But yeah, just wanted to appreciate how smooth and easy it was to jump in with our policies that we had set ahead of time, and we had some clean handouts that were really easy to talk to, and legislators were really receptive, or the ones that we met with at least, were really receptive to our city and the issues that we're facing, and they had some interesting ideas and bills that they were working on that I think we were already kind of tracking, so it was great.
I'll add to that. I was really appreciative that we were able to get those meetings and go down. Typically, when we've gone to AWC City Action Days, we experience that it's just a really busy time in the legislature, and it's hard to get conversations, and things are not because it's the cutoff. Feels like they're sort of wrapping up before things move forward for voting, and this meant that we were able to go at an earlier phase when things are really in committee, and we were able to talk to representatives across our region. I had a really great conversation with Senator Stanford about Shelton View, and he had some really good ideas about how to move forward in helping that transfer take place if we're going to turn it into an official kind of regional park area. And I just also want to thank Tony, especially our deputy city manager, for all of the work you put into compiling this information and sharing it with us. For Shelley, our consultant, I noticed this week in our legislative update that information regarding healthcare trust and universal healthcare was included, both in the tracker and also in the kind of the writing up above. And I just really appreciate recognizing how healthcare relates to public safety in a way that many local governments can understand how making sure that our citizens have better care provided to them can prevent and help address some of the biggest issues that we face as cities. So really glad to see that. Today, I also testified to the local government committee in support of House Bill 1299, which would be removing barriers around parking in order to build housing near transit. And apparently my cat was the talk of the committee because she decided to make an appearance while I was speaking. But I'm glad that I could participate in that. And that's sort of my update, but thank you for just how responsive the team has been to all of the fast kind of movements that happen in the legislature, that we then had the opportunity to respond quickly and and stay on top of things. And that's a big challenge for anybody, but you've done admirably. Thank you.
Before you move on, Councilmember Eldricks, I would tell you that Shelley Helder is amazing. She is top-notch. She's an amazing, amazing, amazing lobbyist for the city.
It's good to hear that. Thank you.
you can tell that the people that were watching that never watched Bothell Planning Commission meetings like 4 or 5 years ago, because like,
There was always the
yes,
cat
there was
showing
all
up.
the cat.
Yeah.
Yes, I didn't get to watch your testimony yet, but I've got an idea.
It was a different cat this
Yes,
time.
oh, okay. Councilmember Dodd?
Thanks. Yeah, the kittens that Jenny had when we were on the planning commission together were one of the highlights for sure, aside from the content of the meetings. I just wanted to thank council members Kurd and Alders for going to Olympia. I think we had many more people who were initially going to go, and then life happened for a lot of us. So I really appreciate that you both were able to make it and create a presence for our city down there. I know it is easy for life to happen, and it is pretty hard sometimes to make that drive in the middle of the week. So I really appreciate both of you for going, and Tony and Shelley too. Thank you.
Councilmember Zorns?
Thank you. I just wanted to add a quick comment because Councilmember Mankey was watching city council straight out of high school practically. But the history of where we are now versus where we were when I started 7 years ago, I am just gobsmacked at how proactive the city of Bothell has become. You know, initially 7 years ago, Shelton View Forest was just like, is anybody listening to us? And now they're a major priority, and I'm really grateful for that. And I know we have staff that is really excellent at writing grants and keeping their ear to the ground on things legislatively, but I think it really helps us as a council that we're that extra voice that's just kind of putting the city on the front burner instead of on the back burner. So I appreciate all the hard work.
Would this be a good time to talk about the letter, or should we do that later in the meeting, Councilmember Kurd?
I was going to bring it up during council conversations, but I guess it is tangentially related to this legislative session. So before you, council members and city clerk, I have provided a letter that was written by Sightline Institute and shared to a number of different organizations and individuals, kind of like a surprisingly broad coalition of folks that have signed in pro for Senate Bill 5184, House Bill 1299. That's the parking by Senator Bateman and Representative Peterson. So we are already signed in pro. And so when I was approached for this letter, I said, yes, you can use my name as an individual, and that I would bring it back to our council. You'll see that other cities, Vancouver and Port Townsend, have also signed on in support of this letter. So I guess to provide clarity, we'll need to hear from 4 of you or 3 more of you, 3 more of us, if we're interested in signing on as a city council. Again, it's aligned with our legislative policy manual, so just formalizing.
Councilmember Alders?
As someone who testified in support of this bill today, I would support us signing on as a city.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a reason why only a handful of cities signed on? Do you know? Any idea?
I think the letter was written
now?
just a couple of days ago.
Oh, I see.
And
Has it made it rounds?
I don't think it's made it to cities yet on their days that they meet.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind signing on.
Councilmember Dodd?
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing this forward, Councilmember Kurd, and we obviously support this bill as a city. That's why Councilmember Alders testified. So I think it makes sense to sign the letter. And every different part of concern in housing seems to have signed on, including a lot of really influential environmental groups. So, this seems like an everybody club, and I'd love to be a part of it. So, cool.
All right. I will go also. I mean, it's not only environment, there's a lot of labor, a whole lot of affordable housing groups, and also just like the BIAW. And like anytime you've got like the BIAW and 350 Washington on the same side of something, like that is fairly notable to me. Yes, I'm in favor of that as well. Thank you, Councilmember Curd.
Thanks. I have direction to tell Sightline to sign on the city.
Yeah, we'd be happy to follow up tomorrow for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
And Mayor, if there's no other question, there may be other questions, but you did. If not, we're completed with the city manager report.
Perfect. Thank you. I paused long enough that it felt awkward and then took my turn. All right, next up is council committee reports, community reports, and conversations. Councilmember Mankey.
Sorry, I was waiting to see if another council member might jump in. Councilmember Zorns and I had the pleasure of attending the promotion ceremony yesterday for Captain Rogers and Sergeant Jordahl. Captain Rogers has been with the department for more than a couple decades. You wanted me to call him Captain America? I can do that, Captain America. His face is well known in the community, been around for a long time. And Sergeant Jordahl as well is a Bothell local, grew up here, went to Bothell High School. So it's great to see them both receive their promotions yesterday. And it's great to see employees moving up within the department to advance leadership roles.
All right, next up is projected agenda discussion. Does anybody have an item they would like to discuss? Councilmember Aldrich.
Since it came up in the legislative update, there is an opportunity for cities to support a resolution for universal health care, the Washington State Health Trust. Let me see if I can pull up that bill number real quick, because it's listed in our little guide here. I will get there soon. Maybe, oh, there it is. Senate Bill 5233 and House Bill 1445. If the city council would like, I could bring forward a resolution that we could sign on to and support. So since it's in alignment with our legislative agenda and our priorities, that I could submit a resolution to clerk staff and the executive office, so they could bring that forward to us. And so that would be for a projected agenda. If there is support for that, I'm happy to hear or not.
Councilmember Curd.
Yeah, thanks. I would be in support of that. I think that there's a moment right now in the legislature that we can kind of take advantage of the momentum. And so writing a letter of support would be really welcome on this. I think it matches a lot of some of the root cause issues that, like you mentioned earlier, Councilmember Aldrich's root cause issues of a lot of problems that we face as a city, and just as folks helping each other and building the beloved community, I think that it's straight up in alignment. So thanks. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thanks. Thanks for bringing this up. It makes me think of how we've done our human services need assessment. We've funded some behavioral health care for residents, seeing gaps in our community and in their access to health care. And we also know that there's no way we can fill all of those gaps for every person who lives in Bothell on our own. So I think signing on to this, or passing a resolution that we support it, kind of uses our collective voice in a way that furthers those interests and just acknowledges that we see the challenges our residents face. So I'm for it. Thank you.
So, and Mayor, with that, as soon as we have three, we have enough direction. So if it works for you, what we'll do is work with Councilmember Aldrich to get something written up and published in the packet at one of the two upcoming meetings for council to consider.
Yeah, please do. I mean, in the places in the world that have good public options for healthcare get better results for less money than we do here, and I like better results for less money. You? Yeah, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I know it's not, I don't know if it's a projected agenda item. I wanted to mention it in the previous section, but something that's, I'm trying to think of something that we, given the environment we're in and how a lot of our residents and maybe residents in Bothell and residents in the region are highly affected by what's going on at the federal level, it's affecting us here locally. Is there something as a city, a statement, a public statement that we can publicize widely to tell our residents that they are safe in the city of Bothell? And they don't have to worry about, what's happening. They're safe here and protected. We just talked about police department. I know we have a very amazing, we talked privately with some members of the police department, but is there something we can do as a city that can make a public, widely available statement to protect our most vulnerable residents?
Deputy Mayor, I have a suggestion to kind of follow the example of the city of Olympia. They recently passed a resolution, I believe, in support of becoming a sanctuary city for LGBTQ individuals. And I think what you're describing is a little more broad than that. It would be more inclusive, but that we might be able to look to that as an example of what you're suggesting.
LGBTQ, immigrants, religious, everything, indeed. It's a question, it's not an answer. I don't know, is this something we can talk about another time? Or is this a council? I don't have a specific thing, honestly, so I just wanted to see what we think as a council, and then maybe we can work on something for a public, highly publicized statement.
Councilmember Dodd?
I think 4 or 5 years ago, the city council passed a resolution about being a safe place, specifically around like, I don't want to guess, but I think there is like precedent for that. And I think that there are a lot of people who are scared. And I would support something that kind of, without trying to just pick every acronym under the sun, but that does kind of holistically say, like, we're here for you and we want to help you and that kind of stuff. I think that could be a great thing, and I would love to see it come back and see what you can come up with.
No matter who you are, where you're from, Bothell is everybody's hometown. Explained.
Exactly.
What do you think, City Manager? You good?
Yeah, we'll work with the deputy mayor and get something drafted for consideration.
I also saw, I think it was the Tukwila Police Department put up a nice post that I saw and thought, that looks nice. Say what?
Redmond.
Redmond did as well. Okay. All right. I would love to accept a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember Dodd?
You know what? I move to approve the consent agenda.
Seconded.
Ooh, I got a motion from Councilmember Dodd and a second from Councilmember Curd, after much thought, to approve the consent agenda. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, City Clerk?
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Councilmember Menke?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
I'm really looking forward to what happens the next vote. Like, I'm good. We're all going to be waiting on Deputy Mayor Alcabra here. First up, under ordinances and resolutions, is Agenda Bill 25016, Donation and Sponsorship Policy Code Amendments. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council, again. This item coming before you is for action tonight, and oftentimes, as you have observed the pattern, we do tend to go through a study session to action portion, but hopefully tonight's ordinance before you is straightforward enough that a study session need not apply. If that's not the case, you can always ask us to try again and bring this back. So just always want to reinforce that you always have choices. But to walk you through what we are proposing as an addition to the Bothell Municipal Code, we are joined tonight by our Deputy Finance Director, Andrew Wachong, who is going to provide an overview of the ordinance and the code and answer any questions you may have. Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. Here before you today to ask for your consideration of an ordinance regarding the acceptance of donations and sponsorships.
Can I ask you to move the microphone closer to you so we can hear you better? Thanks.
Okay, good? Okay. Current state law allows the city to accept donations and sponsorships, but has never been formally codified in the Bothell Municipal Code. In addition, the city does not have an approved policy or procedures for accepting donations. The ordinance incorporates existing state laws into the Bothell Municipal Code and allows the city manager to create policies and procedures for accepting donations. The ordinance allows the city manager or authorizes the city manager to accept or decline on behalf of the city all donations made, with the exception of donations of real property. Donations of real property must be approved or declined by council. So the recommendation we have today is to adopt the new chapter of the Bothell Municipal Code and incorporate existing state laws and allow municipalities to accept gifts and donations. And I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilmember Zorns.
I have no questions except a comment that I'm very, very glad that you're doing this. I was listing off, I made a short list of things that I've asked about in the past. This is pre-Kyle and pre-Aaron, so it's... But in the past, I've asked about, creating like a GoFundMe for a canine dog. This is before we got Roe, or a memorial for Officer Shoup, or playground equipment. And I was told every time, well, we don't have we don't have anything set in place. So the fact that we're doing this, whoever spotted this and got the ball rolling, my undying gratitude. Thank you very much for doing this.
Councilmember Aldrichs.
Okay, I got called on. I'm very excited to see this. This came to my attention after my mother passed away, and I wanted to honor her with a plaque through the Parks Department. And I was kind of shocked when I found out that, yes, I could honor her with a plaque, but it would not be able to be accompanied by a donation to the Parks Department. And I just kind of wondered why. And so I'm very grateful to the executive's office, to our city manager for putting this into action. I also know that our parks board has requested a policy like this as well, especially around the opportunity for sponsorships. And so if I am understanding this ordinance correctly, sponsorships would also be included as allowable under this code. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. Okay. That is what I was hoping to see. Donations, sponsorships. We got it, and I'm excited to move forward with this. Thank you.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thank you. I agree that this is super exciting. And I'm going to phrase this in a really silly way to make a serious point without trying to pick a stance that will offend anyone. So I want to make sure that the city manager has kind of clearance to decline politely a donation. Like if the Society for Pineapple on Pizza wants to name a park after themselves and buy the whole playground, and we decide not to take a stance as a city on pineapple on pizza, we don't have to accept that donation.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And that is where the policy will come in, is that we'll define what we will and will not accept so that it's clear going forward, because it's not always about who's in the seat. It's about the decision criteria and the values.
Councilmember Mankey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for doing this work to fill our code where we had a hole in it. Curious, to date, what's been our procedure when somebody's come to us and wanted to donate something? Have we just kind of handled everything one-off differently, or have we declined everything over time?
I believe we do handle things one-off. It depends on the situation. We have donations from pet licensing. I think you can donate there. Parks obviously has lots of donations. There's PD and fire also accept donations, but they're all handled differently. So this hopefully will give us cohesive policies and procedures to follow.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm happy to support this one.
I agree with the rest of council, and if anybody would like to make a motion, I would love that. Councilmember Aldrichs.
I motion that we adopt a new chapter of the Bothell Municipal Code to incorporate existing state laws that allow municipalities to accept gifts and donations.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Alders and a second from Councilmember Dodd to approve the recommended action. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, City Clerk?
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Kurd?
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ocabra?
Concur.
Passes 7-0. Thank you.
All right, it is 6:46. Our next agenda bill is a study session. We are going to take a 10-minute break before then, an 11-minute break, call it. We'll be back at 6:47 or 57. Okay, 7 o'clock. Welcome back. Our next agenda bill is a study session about considering the frequency of appointing a salary committee. It's Agenda Bill 25017. And before I kick it over to the city manager to introduce our presenter, I just want to say that, you know, those of us on the city council, one of the big benefits of being on the city council is that you get to go into executive session with the man, the myth, the legend, Matthew Pruitt. And now everybody gets to experience what it's like to hear the dulcet tones of Matt Pruitt present here in full council. So I'm really looking forward to that for all of the rest of you who are watching that haven't gotten to experience this before. So I'm going to kick it over to the city manager and let you take it from there.
Thank you, Mayor. And it's true. It's a rare appearance at under the lights and the cameras. Tonight before you, we have two study sessions, and the first one is, as the mayor mentioned, a consideration of the frequency of appointing a salary committee. As you may recall, on January 7th, when the city clerk was providing an update to council about the process for recruiting boards and commissions, there was a question raised about if the salary committee would be included in that. And as the discussion took place, the council did give direction of bringing back more information. So tonight, we are going to hear from Matt Pruitt, who is the Director of Employee Technology Services, to provide an overview of state law and what's currently in the municipal code, and then also what has been considered in the past. So with that, I'm going to turn things over for presentation, the much built-up presentation from Matt. Take it away.
Thank you. No pressure. Good evening. The first thing that I wanted to point out is the word committee. That's new in changes that you guys adopted in 2024. We used to call it the Salary Commission, and I have not gotten that out of my head yet, so you may hear it called two things throughout the night, but I will attempt to get it right. What we're asking tonight is we're seeking feedback as to whether the council would like to us to bring back code amendments to be drafted to consider at a future meeting regarding the frequency of appointing and convening a salary committee. And we're not taking any action tonight. So I will give you a quick overview of kind of the state law and then really the Bothell Municipal Code, which governs our salary committee. We'll take a look at other salary commissions and how often they meet. I got some data for you on that. We're going to talk a little bit about the Bothell Salary Committee and what they did and what might happen in the future with other salary committees based upon those discussions in 2024. And then, of course, we can answer your questions and discuss things further as you desire. So there are basically two pathways in state law. Number one, under RCW 352115, you can create a salary commission, or number two, you can put an ordinance that you're not doing that and sort of follow the rules of the RCW and how to determine salaries of the city. Regardless of which path you choose, there are three things that are true. Salary increases are effective and incorporated immediately. Decreases are effective at the next term of office. So if an increase happens, then you have to wait. You have to wait for the decrease to affect current council members until a new term begins. And then finally, any decisions that are made are subject to referendum. So any increases that happen and a member of the public would like to work with the city clerk's office to put that to public referendum, there is a process to do that as well, and it's required by state law. Years ago, the city of Bothell chose to go the salary commission route, and we adopted Bothell Municipal Code Chapter 2.92, and these are essentially the rules of which the salary committee operates under. And many of these you should be familiar with, because many of them are rules that were just changed here in early 2024 after review from the city attorney's office. The mayor makes the decision about who to appoint to the salary commission, working with the clerk's office, going through the normal recruitment processes that we go through for most boards and commissions. And then that decision is approved by the city council before it's enacted. All the meetings of the salary committees are open public meetings. The public is invited each and every time the salary committee meets, and they have to have a public hearing. So their final meeting, if they decide to do something and make changes, they have to have the public come in or have the opportunity for the public come in and to provide feedback on that. I will say that doesn't happen often, but we have made lots of efforts in the past to make these decisions accessible and available to the public. So the question that started the conversation for tonight was whether we wanted to have our salary committee meet more often than it does. And so I took a look just out of curiosity, and I thought it might be helpful at what other cities do in our geographic region, and this is it. 3 of the cities only have a salary committee meet if they make a decision to appoint one. And so in some of those cases, it's very irregular. Many years between when salary commissions meet. Most of the cities, they meet every 2 years, like the city of Bothell. And then the city of Kirkland was the only one that I found that met every year. And basically what they do is they meet every 2 years, sort of like our salary commission meets, but then every other year they have a check-in in case they want to come back and make other changes in the summer months to what they've decided the year before. Many factors are included or considered when the commissions meet. These are a list of them. I would say a couple of about the list is that when we talk about the economy and the city budget, they're not actually going through and trying to budget their decision and determine whether that's fiscally. It's more about having a conversation about the mood of things. For example, 2020, there was a lot going on in 2020. The salary commission was supposed to meet that year, and we met for maybe about 20 minutes because they just determined that based on what was going on economically and what they were hearing about the city budget, they didn't think it was an appropriate time. That's the only time that that's happened, but they really do a good job of sort of like understanding, how things are going with city staff and in the economy and various things to sort of determine whether or not it's even the right time to make a decision or a change or not. The other thing that I would say about this list is that every commission that we've had here at the city does a really good job of balancing these things. So there may be one of the items on the list here that really kind of sparks a discussion. They go down a route, but they really do a good job of going through these various items and then considering different factors that and to come out with a balanced decision. And the other thing that I wanted to point out was the thing that was the most important to the most recent, the 2024 salary committee, was the access to running for office and equity. It was a bigger deal than it's been in the past. It's always been talked about. It's always been a topic of discussion. It was really a main focus of this group that met in 2024, and I expect it will be again when other salary committees meet, especially if you have some of those members that repeat terms. The 2024 Salary Committee did meet over the summer. Here is basically shows where people can go to view some of the work that they did. One of the things that we recently pointed up here is you can go on and see a two-pager about the decisions they made, but also what was the logic behind the decision and why they felt the way they felt about whatever decision they made. You can go on here and see YouTube videos of the meetings that we've had, with the exception of one because of an operator error issue. Those are posted on this site. And then also you see the ordinance that they eventually passed and enacted. So we try to do our best to get the information out there so it's available if people have any questions, either you or members of the public. They made 3 decisions this year in 2024. I would say there were 3. They did a lot of work and sort of asked good questions and went out and got a lot of good data to consider in making these 3 decisions. One of those things they did is we hired a consultant this year to kind of go out and look at city councils throughout the state. It's a much more expansive look than maybe we've done in the past. And it was a good opportunity for, instead of just doing it the way that the city does it, maybe having somebody else in the room and having them interact with the commission and sort of ask questions. And I thought we learned a lot through that process. I also thought that there was good information that was provided and was helpful to the commission or the committee. I thought we've never used this resource before, but they were interested in looking at the Washington State Office of Equity's community service guidelines. I wasn't sure at the beginning because we're not Washington State, we're a municipality, but it actually, and I hadn't read the document before, but it actually provided a lot of good guidance for them and helped specifically, and when they were deciding when they wanted to do a low-income stipend, that document was very helpful in sort of figuring out how to do that and how to implement it. And then they asked questions from you, more questions than past committees have asked council members in the past. And I believe all of you responded to emails with information that they wanted to know about what you do as a council member and how much time it takes and how much of your lives are devoted to it and things of that nature. And in considering all of that stuff, they made 3 decisions, and the 33% salary increase was the first decision. That is larger than other commissions in the past, but considering all of the stuff that we've talked about, creating more access to running for public office, they thought that that was the right decision, and it also reviewing what other city councils throughout the state are doing. The low-income stipend as well, that is available for the first time, and if newly elected council members or current council members came to us, we have some guidelines through that document that I previously talked to you about that we would use in order to determine whether or not to provide a low-income stipend. And then deferred compensation is not new. Council members are able to participate in the city's deferred compensation plan at no cost to the city. They discussed other benefits, and I would say that this 2024 committee, this was more of expansive discussion. I won't say by far, but it was more expansive discussion than it has been in the past. They talked about whether or not we enact cost of living adjustments. They talked about a public transportation allowance, child care stipends, cell phone services, medical, dental, and vision benefits, life insurance, long-term disability. I would say also, especially if there's some continuity in the membership of the committee in the future, which may or may not happen, that these items are not dead for discussion. They were very clear and wanted staff to take notes about that. These are items that they want to bring up and consider again in the future. I think when doing the work this time around, they wanted to make decisions about salary, and then kind of with the other factors they were considering, sort of balance this introduction of new things over time rather than do just everything at once. I think they felt that was the most responsible decision, and that's how they approached it. So that is the end of my presentation. Any questions or feedback?
I think I owe all of you an apology because I brought this up a few meetings ago without really preparing anything for it. So thank you for being willing to have this conversation with really not much prep on my part at all. I wanted to just explain kind of why I proposed bringing this up, not just to y'all here around the table with me, but also to folks in the community who may be interested. So I wrote something down this time, so I'm just going to read this. I brought this up because our salary committee made an increase last year that brought our wage up to roughly minimum wage based on the hours that we gave last year. And quite frankly, I just don't think that's enough to make doing this job accessible to the average person living in Bothell. Bothell's median age is late 30s, and most folks I'm going to say most folks in Bothell probably don't have the ability to give away so much time to get and to do this job well. And we are really fortunate that we have a council that I think fairly accurately represents the composition of our community. But luck isn't a strategy for long-term success. Structures work and systems do their job. And we see the system that we have that's very similar. And a lot of city councils don't look like their entire community. And I don't think we're all the way there, but I think we're doing all right. So I would like to set up a structure that results in it being more likely that in the future we continue to have a council that's as accurate as possible a representation of Bothell. Additionally, after our salary committee met last year, Redmond and Bellevue, along with Kirkland before that, made really significant changes to how they compensate council members. I know that in an election year, people who don't agree with this council on things will probably try to make this a political issue. So I am going to talk about, and this is more for the community because y'all know this, some of the sacrifices people make to do this job. Again, that pays right around minimum wage with no benefits. When I was laid off from my day job a couple of years ago, I was so tired and burned out that it took me about 1.5 years to get back to work. And the reason I was so exhausted is because on top of a full-time job and a young family, I spent a lot of time and effort trying to make Bothell a better place. That loss of income alone is far more significant than anything I will ever make back from this job. And if you take opportunity cost into account, doing this job has cost way more than I will ever make from it. A couple days ago, I was getting ready to take vacation from work for the few trips that we make every year in our conferences. And between City Action Days, the NLC conference, and the AWC conference later this year, and the council retreat we just had, that's 10 vacation days that I need to take off to do my minimum wage part-time job. I have 10 days of vacation a year at work. So if I go do those things, then my family gets no vacation time with me. And that's a pretty significant, I think, personal cost. I have a couple busy kids. Every time I do this job in the evenings, I miss their games, lessons, recitals, events, and I don't have a whole lot of those years left. That's a pretty significant personal cost. Additionally, we have folks in our community who can say pretty much anything they want about us, and they do. People say we're on the take, that we're trying to destroy Bothell, that we don't care about the residents. And I've had people who, in the community, who I cared enough about to go to their home to talk to them after they expressed a disagreement with some of the policies that I propose, turn around and misrepresent those conversations publicly and try to make them nefarious after I went over to try to have a conversation at their home because I valued them. There's a contingent of folks who will say just about anything, it seems, to accomplish their political goals, really without regard for the fact that those of us who do this job are people, and we care about this community a lot. Like a lot of us have spent our whole lives here, and you can get away with that because part of the cost of this job is that because now that we're a public figure, we're exempted from libel laws. And having people in your community that you've spent your whole life in, like I pretty much have here, saying things that are incredibly untrue about you and also just wrong and bad, like that's a big cost. Like there's a lot of people around here. I grew up here, and having folks say those things, it sucks and it's hard. And, we have had people post pictures of our kids online while speaking negatively about us. We've had really severe violations of privacy. We've had violence threatened against us. We've had folks lose jobs because of our public platform. We've had people insinuate that we make decisions based on campaign contributions and speak to the press about it for the whole world to see. So any job we apply for in the future, anywhere we go, you do a Google name, and that's going to pop up. It's not true, but that doesn't always matter if people aren't tethered to fact or decency. And that's part of a pretty significant cost to do the job. Now, none of us do this for financial reasons, like we all know. We do this because we care about Bothell. And as a resident of Bothell, I think Bothell should care more about people who do this job because it's hard. It's a lot more time consuming than most people realize and comes at really significant personal cost. And without remuneration that adequately represents the time and cost to do this job, we've created a system that biases toward two categories of people. First, people aren't going to spend very much time doing it and not do a very good job. And second, people who have the means to be able to take on a part-time job that costs significantly more than it remunerates. And that's a pretty big minority of people in Bothell. And I, as a Bothell resident, think the city should have representation that reflects people in Bothell. I want normal Bothell residents to do this job, and I want to create a system that provides an incentive to work hard and do the job well. Now, clearly, I'm happy to serve under the way we do things right now, but I am not going to be on the city council forever. And when I'm not here, I still want a city council that accurately reflects the community. And I want a community who appreciates their council. And I think Bothell should all want that, because I know we all care about this place and we want the best for it. So I have another point to make, but that's kind of what I wanted to say just to kick off the discussion in terms of removing the restriction of every 2 years on calling a salary committee.
Thank you, Mayor, for your comments. I do have a couple of questions for Matt here, and then I'll share some thoughts. But one of the things you mentioned was that Kirkland meets every year. How long ago did they make that decision? Has it always been that way? Is it a recent change?
No, it's a very recent change. I don't remember
Okay.
the exact year, but I want to say I just read their ordinance change that did that, and I believe that was in the last 3 years, but I can
Okay.
get you an exact year.
Recent is close enough to get to the point. Do you perhaps know the reasoning for why they moved to that?
I don't.
Okay. That's more of what I would be curious about, but I might just talk to Kirkland colleagues to figure that out instead. And then the mayor mentioned that if you break down the amount of time, I think we all sort of estimated 15, 20 hours a week is what we're spending on council duties. Do you know if what that actually breaks down to? The mayor just compared it to the minimum wage. Is that ballpark accurate?
Yeah, I don't have the monthly stipend amounts in front of me, but I want to say that is ballpark accurate. It may be a little higher, but it's in the ballpark.
Okay, and that's based on Washington State minimum wage?
Correct.
Okay, so we're not talking federal minimum wage.
Or county minimum wage, which is $4 an hour higher.
There you go. So yeah, just just a little data gathering here. And then you also mentioned that the committee expressed interest in addressing some other topics. And given the structure that they were brought in, that they knew that it would be 2 years from 2026.
They went a little even further than discussed that. They directed staff to make notes that those are items that they would want future committees to discuss and consider in the future.
Okay, and I know that they're not currently convened, so it's not necessarily like an option to ask them for like an official determination. But it seems to me with that level of of drive to move the conversation forward, that they themselves might welcome meeting more frequently at a once-a-year rate instead of the every other year. And I know you can't speak for them, I can't speak for them, but that indication, like that seems to be an indication that like if they want to move forward with what they intend to move forward with, we could actually assist them in their work by making it more frequent. That is a speculation on my part. My reason for my comments on this, there's two reasons for why I'd like to see this move forward. One is what the mayor mentioned around recruitment of candidates, so that we can create equitable opportunities for people to be more willing to take on the sacrifices that this job entails, knowing that, there's a lot that goes into it that nobody ever really wants to sign up for. Nobody wants to sign up for death threats. Nobody wants to sign up for their family's privacy being violated. Nobody enjoys that. And when we talk about building a beloved community, we're talking about culture change. We're talking about trying to create a community where nobody would do that to one another. But unfortunately, we know from experience that is what happens here. And so I think of candidates who are, or potential candidates who are considering doing this job, and I want to make sure that it's not going to be a financial burden or hardship for them to give the best of themselves to a community that really cares for each other, or at least we would like to, like that is the ideal that we're working for. And then the other reason, I may have just forgotten it. Oh my goodness, I was prepared. Is to support the work of the Salary Commission going forward, knowing that they are interested in making this more holistic in nature. So I'd like to reconvene them to let them continue their work. Oh, and that brings me to my second point, was that we know that salary structures are changing across the region, Redmond, Bellevue, and recently Kirkland. So there is a trend towards a more competitive compensation package for people. And now, the timing of our committee was such that those things happened after our committee met. And I would like to see, if they had the opportunity to meet again and look at those comparables, how their recommendations might be different. So those are my thoughts on the matter. Thanks.
Thank you for the presentation, the man, the myth. I know it's weird to see you here. We're usually used to seeing you in the. Are you turning all red?
I love you, man.
So the Kirkland one, you mentioned you had it as 1 year, but then you said it's every 2 years, but one is like a check-in, just like we have our biennium budget, and then every year we do the mid-buy. I mean, that's in effect an annual budget kind of thing. So in general, how much would it affect your time or general staff's time if you change a frequency like this?
The answer to that is it really depends, and it depends on how much work the committee wants to do. If it's a matter of getting them to meet and just sort of review what they did the last time, probably not a lot more, but if they want to really delve into things, and I think they probably, if the trend continues from the last committee, I think they would. It is more staff time, but it's not undoable. It's within a 90-day period, and if we had a second year, we could have similar parameters around that. So it's, at least we know when it is and know when it's coming, and we can prepare for it.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. I, in general, agree that we have a system that is biased towards people who can actually afford to run and serve on office versus people who can. So if we, the closer, I mean, you're never going to do a six-figure salary and make it, unless it becomes a full-time city, which is, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So it's still a part-time job. It's just we have to make it lucrative enough, or maybe the benefits around that, like that was listed, maybe that will be enticing enough. It's not just about money is important, the salary, but it's all the other stuff that makes it the job more accessible to more people. That's a good thing. So I don't have, in principle, I don't have. I don't think I'm thinking out loud because this is all new. So I don't think I have an issue with an annual. Like my tendency is like once a year, unless there's something massive that comes. Is like Matt comes back. It's like, hey guys, we need more staff time or whatever budget time, more budget to do this work type thing, which is very interesting. Then maybe every 2 years will be fine, but an annual thing doesn't seem to be like too bad. Like your thoughts, like in general. I know you don't want to make a decision on our behalf, but it's like for you, does it feel like it's too much? Because your contribution is very important. So I just want to understand what it is from your end. Is it too much or is it just right, like Goldilocks?
So I'm gonna take that one just in the standpoint of our role here is to enact the direction of the council. So I appreciate the thoughtfulness of thinking of what is the demand of staff time. And there are going to be times when the council is going to ask us to do something that we're not resourced to do. And if that happens, we'll come back and we'll talk to you about it and see if you want to add resources. So I always want to put that into context of our job is to implement the policy direction from the council, and we'll find a way to do that.
And you always say that, which I very much appreciate. Thank you, but I always want to check also and just confirm that that's the case, that you're going to come back and tell us, hey, this is too much.
No, I appreciate that. And it's a helpful reminder for staff too of that we do need to, that's where we need to know what our work plan and our workload is, and also be able to articulate and show it when there's a problem.
This is really interesting. I think it's really brushing up against a wall, and I don't know if it's regional or gender-based or what, but just advocating for yourself is something that's pretty challenging. That's why there's classes on how to ask for a raise and everything. And I'm not asking for a raise. I'm very lucky to, and it's public, we have to file our salary range, the property we own, the investments we have, the debt we carry. I remember when I was first appointed to council, I wasn't 12 months out from a divorce, so I had to call my ex-husband and ask him about his salary to file it with the PDC, which thankfully wasn't awkward because we have a good friendship going, but it could have been. And that's part of it, is that this is a very public job. As the mayor said, now there's a lot of Google results that wouldn't be there if I had just stayed home on Tuesday nights. And I'm learning that not every news outlet treats fact-checking and journalistic integrity the same. It's something that I think definitely will always have a level of volunteerism, because not everybody that you meet every day is going to say, yeah, I want all my stuff public like that. But part of how we get councils that really represent the people in the city has to be that everybody could do it. And to me, that does mean setting a floor that makes the job possible for people. Not in a way that you're going to get rich doing this, because no, but a way that we can really make sure that Bothell is well represented and that our council looks somewhat like our community. We have kind of, and everyone knows I got bored one day and made a spreadsheet of who was on council when, so that I could see who had done our past comp plans, because I process things in spreadsheets at times. And yes, it's rainbow. And we haven't always been a city that has a council that really looks like our community. We haven't had a lot, like I think about how many of us have kids in school right now, how many of us are like working full time on top of this job. And then it gets into, there's just not a lot of jobs you can have where you can go to a ceremony or go to Olympia in the middle of the day. As we all learned when we got down to 2 people who went to Olympia last week. So whatever we can do to provide that balance to encourage real voices in our community is important. And one thing that is on my mind a lot with this is the amount of participation we have in sort of regional boards and commissions and organizations. And I don't mean to pick on these, but I'm just going to name off the Association of Washington Cities, Sound Cities Association, Snohomish County Cities and Towns. We represent Bothell on those, and then those bodies appoint some of their members to PSRC boards, to county boards in both counties, to state and federal boards. So when our representation in cities doesn't look like the people we represent, those boards become more homogenous and they don't represent those wider groups of residents. Someone asked me recently about AWC's legislative agenda and why it's so different from Bothell's and why it's not necessarily what they think would help them as a resident of, in this case, Seattle, but it's because it's a concentration of people who have the income and who have the place in life, not worrying about who's watching your kids, who's, you know, if you need to miss work to do something, how you're going to make up that income. We really, the more we can do in our city to be on some other city's list of benchmarks that other cities do, I think the more we're creating equity around us and we're all moving up towards that together. And this is a concept I haven't tried to boil down into comments yet. So thanks for going along this verbal journey with me. But I think it's really important that we at least look at it. I think if we're afraid to look at this every year, it makes it seem like there's something bad we're going to discover about our compensation. And I do think that just talking to people within the first legislative district, you know, in nearby cities, like we have made good strides here. So I don't know that we'll see action every year if we look at this every year, but we shouldn't be afraid to look and we shouldn't be afraid to have these conversations. Because as the mayor said, I'm tired. I'm not going to do this forever. And I want the person after me not to struggle so much. And if reviewing compensation yearly or a check-in, like we talked about Kirkland having, like, I think that makes sense. And I would want to leave this job with the sense that the people who come in it behind me aren't fighting this battle, that I could have just gotten them a little bit more forward in. So I wasn't sure when you brought this up. I'm looking at you, Miss. I know. I'm just in case the camera doesn't show that I'm looking at Mason. But if we can't be afraid to look, and again, I don't see change happening every year. I'm not saying it needs to be a full-time job, but it is deeply important for all the policy making that we have a chance at touching, especially if you get, you know, onto an SCA thing, they get appointed to a federal thing. Like, the more we can broaden the representation on all of these areas that we can touch, I think the better our government works for us. And I like that idea. That sounds pretty cool.
Councilmember Dodd, just for clarification, I want to make sure that I'm interpreting what you said correctly. Mr. Pruitt mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that there's 2 paths of reviewing compensation. One is to appoint a salary committee. One is to do it yourself. You used we language, but I'm assuming
we as
that you
Bothell,
meant
yeah, I mean
that you would want to appoint a salary committee to look at this. Not that the council would take this on. Is that correct? Correct.
Yeah. In talking earlier about it being difficult to advocate for yourself, I am not ready to set a good night. But yeah, that's the collective Bothell we.
I'll jump in with a couple of thoughts. One, thank you for commenting about staff. And I hope that it isn't a generous use of your time that you know, staff ends up regretting committing to this. So that has my foot over the brake on, do we pump the brakes on this? The other thing is, I have a question, is when we talk about our unions, how often do we negotiate their contracts?
All of our contracts are every 3 years.
Okay, so I don't like what that saying that we're going to convene this every year, what it communicates to the people who are boots on the ground in the city, doing the dirty work to make this city run. I see this as a labor of love, and there will always be a measure of sacrifice. I think it's a fair question of how much sacrifice there should be. But I also am very concerned about what it communicates to the people who report for duty every day here for the city, that we say, you know, we get to have that conversation every year. You have to wait another 2 years. And I don't know that they would actively complain about that. I feel guilty about it. I just feel as though that's putting us on a special plane over what they have to live with in real life. I don't know if that makes sense, but I just really feel as though I would be open to the discussion of meeting every 2 years and having and 1 year is the real heavy lift, and year 2 is we come back and assess it. But to meet it every single year on with the same intensity, I just what it communicates to the rest of the people who work for the city, it just doesn't feel right for me.
I would just say that I think if you went to most of our staff and said, we're going to move you to your pay structure to a plan where 3 people determine if you get a raise or not, and you're not at the table negotiating, but you get to do it every year, I don't think we'd have a lot of takers.
Well, it's an interesting argument. However, not when there is a discussion for the salary, not they have their own representation who are coming in having that conversation. So, and then that goes back to them and they decide whether or not they're going to take it. We get it suggested, when our commission/committee meets, they give their recommendation and we decide whether or not we're going to take it. So.
Councilmember Zorns, just for clarification, actually, the council has no authority over it. And so while most boards and commissions do advise the city council, the salary committee, when they make a decision, it goes into effect. The council doesn't adopt or reject anything.
Well, in the past, I thought we voted whether or not we approved of their discussions. No. Okay. Yeah, I feel it doesn't feel right for me that we have, you know, our interests and concerns on the table on an annual basis and the rest of the city does not. So you're going to have to work harder to convince me otherwise.
Can I ask you a question about that? Is it just the frequency? Like with the union contracts we've approved in my time, there's been cost of living built in and different things. Is it that you would want it reviewed every 3 years just with that stuff built in, union contracts?
No, not every 3 years. I'm fine with every 2 years. And I think when this discussion first came up is like, if we're talking about a COLA attached to it every year. Great. I just asking more of it to be shouldered more than just every 2 years, I feel uncomfortable with.
Okay. I was just trying to get to since they're so different, I was trying to get to the root of the discomfort if it was just the higher frequency, but there's such broader conversations when we're doing negotiations.
Yes, and everybody, when they're negotiating something, they're bringing something they care about. Right, and everybody's concerned. I mean, I have a couple of kids who just went through the Boeing strike. Even those 2 sons had different things that they were concerned about that was going to be moved forward in the discussion. So, I don't want to say that our concerns have to mirror what's going on the city level. It's just the privilege of bringing forward to have that discussion, I get uncomfortable when it's more frequent than every 2 years. However, back again, if we were to do the heavy lifting on 1 year and year 2 revisit, then that makes me more comfortable with doing this every year.
Okay, thanks for letting me ask.
I'd also like to ask a question. I'm going to direct it to our head of Human Resources, however. Are there employees in the city who are on contract that are getting paid minimum wage?
No. No employees. No.
Okay. So like there is a value, like I don't know the reason for that, but to me that communicates that there is a value in this city of making sure that jobs performed in the city are living wages. And so I think that it's not a fair comparison to compare our pay to a negotiated contract that looks like not minimum wage.
Hey, Matt. Did you, you were helping to facilitate the meetings by the salary committee this past year, and I'm wondering, you mentioned that every one of us provided feedback. There was an email that came from you on behalf of the salary committee that asked how many hours you put into this job, and a couple other like really overview questions to try and, they were very sanitized from what the discussion was, I'm sure. But the questions were really just about how much work do you do for the city? And I'm wondering if any other council members provided public comment or interacted with the salary commission.
No. And I'm glad you bring that up. We do offer that opportunity. And I would say that commissions have desired more council feedback in the past. Specifically, there's two ways. Number one, you can give them feedback anytime they want during their time, either through staff or collectively in some form. But when we do the public hearings, specifically, we notify council that that is happening and invite them to come if they would like to participate and provide impact. And that has never happened.
Right. I was just going to ask, has that ever happened? No, because it's awkward, right?
Right.
We're not going to do that.
Understandably so.
We're on
Yes,
the
correct.
chopping block on our community every 4 years to say like, oh, you gave yourself a raise. So the public perception of us commenting on the not just the number of hours that we do, but also the opportunity cost, also on the liabilities that we face as part of being in this role. We didn't bring it up with our salary committee this year. And so I feel like reconvening the salary commission, salary committee every single year to try and get at like, why won't they just understand us instead of let's have a conversation with them, even though it's going to be awkward and really difficult. Maybe it's not meant to happen in an election year. And so I'm just torn by, we want to convene frequently enough to get an accurate, so like if you're throwing darts at a dartboard, you want to throw as many darts as you can to try and get into the bullseye, right? But if we really focus on each dart throw, maybe that's how we can get a more accurate and holistic view of our compensation. So this is all not meant to say that I don't agree with what the salary committee came up with, because I didn't give public comment against it, right? And so I think that, yes, there were strides made, and I don't necessarily think that reconvening again and again without us actually doing the hard and uncomfortable work of actually saying what we want out of this job, or what we feel would be a more appropriate level of compensation for people in the community who can't do this work, and where we see the bias of council, of who shows up on council from 1909 to now. I think that we just need to have the conversation, and it's easier, like it's very awkward, but I think it's easier to have that conversation in a year that there's not an election. So that's why I'm really hesitant to say let's change the frequency. Instead, I think if there's any adjustment to the section 2.92, I think it's more intentional conversation between the salary committee and council. We need to have a conversation together rather than them request input from us through staff, and then it goes, roundabout way, and then sanitized down, and then all my personality is reduced down to a range of hours, And so I think that, let's have a conversation. I'm glad that we brought it up. I thank you for bringing it up. I'm really hesitant to just go forward with it as it is, but let's have a conversation.
And actually, one of the things that I wrote down that I didn't get to in my monologue earlier is that we should be more involved in the process. One of the things that I thought from the questions that we got is I don't think they understand what the cost of this job is, and we didn't tell them. And so I don't know if there's a way we can design a process where we can sit around and maybe one of the meetings is we can go and just have a conversation with them. And I don't know what that looks like, but I totally agree with you. I appointed the salary committee, so I tried to be very hands-off. So I appointed them and didn't talk to them again until this was all done. I think that was a mistake.
Yeah, I remember there was something happening in the street, Festival Street, and I saw a member of the Salary Commission, and they were walking over to me, and I'm like, oh no, we can't have a conversation. And I put up these barriers because I wanted to be above board. And instead of shying away of those difficult conversations, let's have them in public. Let's have them in a study session. Let's be more collaborative. So I think that's where I'd like to see changes to this code rather than the frequency of meetings.
And I do think you can analyze in terms of what the parameters of the law are. I think there is an aspect of this of where the council would need to go to them as opposed to them coming to you because they are not subordinate to the council. So I think there is a setup of that. But I did want to note in the municipal code right now, as Matt had pointed out around the public hearing, the language specifically does say too that shall include a public hearing to provide an opportunity for the public, the mayor, deputy mayor, and or city council members to address the committee in person or by public written comment. So to the point of the Matt mentioned, it's notified to council. I mean, that really is, it's an invitation. I think that what I'm hearing you say that's different than that is that perhaps something outside of the public hearing, let the public hearing be for the public, let there be a step where there's some engagement and conversation, again, not in a council meeting, but maybe in a salary committee meeting. So I think we can look at how to clarify that, if that needs to be codified or if that's just a process that then the committee, they could decide how they want to do it, knowing that you're available, but they could decide. So we'll look at how to frame that.
Okay. I really appreciate that, Councilmember Curd. I think, you don't want it to look weird, and then you don't say anything, and then they don't know what you're thinking. I do, City Manager, you mentioned I wouldn't want it to be the public hearing because where I love the surprise and delight of the variety of public comment we get, but we can't talk. We can't ask questions. We just listen for 3 minutes, and there's a good place for that. But I would love to find a way to have conversations so the salary committee can ask us questions and get to the root of what their goals are. And then the public hearing in my mind would be for, hey, here's our thoughts. Who in Bothell has, thoughts about our thoughts? There's a better way to say that, I'm sure. But I would want them to be able to ask us things. And, let's say they talk to each of us and they're able to kind of build on, okay, well, the deputy mayor said X and Councilmember Curd said Y. How do we make those two meet or whatever it is? I don't have a good pizza analogy for that one. But I think that sounds like a more helpful process because you're absolutely right. The frequency won't change necessarily like the outcome so much as like the way that the work is done.
Interesting discussion tonight. I wasn't sure how this conversation was going to go, but it's been interesting to hear like everybody share what they're thinking. And I think a lot of things have been shared tonight. Some of them are more purview of the salary commission and not so much us. I think it goes back to the question is how frequently should they meet, not where should they go or where might they go in the future. Having served on the salary commission prior, we never got any kind of council feedback. It was, the invitation went out and it was just silence always, which I think is, it's a way to do it. It's a way to do it. But if council members do have feedback, like I think they should be free and open to share that when the message goes out. I think Councilmember Curd kind of articulated what I was thinking too. I don't know that increasing the frequency would necessarily change much. If they wanted to make a change, they could do it in that 2-year period. It's also aligned with the budget. If they're going to make a big change, like a medical type of thing, that's a lot more money going out from the city. For 7 people, it's not like drastic, but it is something that could be better factored into the budget if it was done on a 2-year time period. I don't know that meeting more often would change a lot. I think more open communication, if council members wanted to provide feedback or insights or give more data. I love the data-driven approach of this last time, of finding out how much do council members actually work? Like how much are they putting in, not just on the dais, but in the packet reviews, in the committees they're a part of, in the community meetings and all the other things that take you away from your day job or your family time or activities or whatever it is. A lot of that, I don't think any of us knew what that was going to be like. I think we all kind of had an idea, but then when we got elected, it was like, oh, that's a bit more than I really thought. So just going back to the question of should they meet more or not, I'm in favor of keeping it at 2 years. And if they want to make larger changes, I think a 2-year cadence is a good time to do that. If they want to do cost of living increases, that's always been an option. I haven't seen a salary commission do that here at Bothell, I think, for a while. But if they want to do cost of living increases like the rest of a lot of staff members get, I think that's a good way to do it. And then if they want to consider larger changes every 2 years is a good way.
You're right. We had a good discussion. I think I know the question says, do we do it more frequently? But I think the question is really what the mayor articulated earlier, or what we've been talking about is, how can we provide more, as current council members, how can we provide more feedback to the committee? And then the larger question is, how can we make sure that once we leave the council, the opportunity is available to a lot more people than the very small subset of people who can actually do it right now. So it's not about I think the question isn't about the frequency, is how can we change the whole framework such that it will be more open to more people, So I think that's what it is. If it's the frequency that's going to solve those questions, then sure. But if it's something else, it could be something else that answers those questions.
I'll just address that real quick. I mean, the big thing that I care about isn't the frequency that we do it, but the rules that we have right now say that we cannot address it this year. And I think that we are not at the state that I would like us to be to make sure that Bothell can have representation from just about everybody. And that rule is the reason that we can't address it this year. So what I want to do isn't say we call a salary commission every year. It's to remove the restriction that we can't, so that we can this year, so we don't have to wait a year to try to make the world a better place.
It could be like ad hoc or whatever, something like this. Like
Yeah, I mean,
something happens and you say
like
we need.
Maybe something like, hey, we call a salary commission every 2 years, and at the mayor's discretion, they can call a salary commission on the odd years if they want to. Like, it's not that we have to do it every year, but like, I think I've heard that like there's a discrepancy between where we are and where we'd like to be in terms of who we want to enable to represent us into the future. And I don't like waiting for things. Kyle can confirm. We have this rule that doesn't allow us to address this right now, and I'd rather address it now before we wait another year.
I think one thing to, again, keep in mind is we don't determine what the salary commission does. We can call them and they could show up and be like, nope, and walk away. So I want to be careful of that, saying more meetings or more opportunities to meet will result in different outcomes. It's their decision. It's their research and study along with staff, and then their decision making, which leads to potential change. So just want to make sure that line is clearly
100%.
drawn there.
And it's a good line to draw just so the public knows, because the salary commission, like the city manager mentioned, they're not subordinate to us. They get to make their own decision. And I think I'm really happy with the discussion we've had today, just in terms of like how we could engage with them and how we could do that. And I would much rather get a chance to do better next time without having to wait an extra year.
The only thing I'd like to add to this discussion is you've brought up the word ad hoc several times, and that was one of the changes that you made in 2024. So essentially what happens is that we appoint and approve a salary commission every 2 years, and they have a 90-minute day period to do it, and then their work is done, and we're on to the next salary commission. That is not the way the Kirkland ordinance reads, for example. If they meet annually, they treat it more like a normal border commission where they're appointed to terms of service. That might be something that we consider when we go back and look at an ordinance, but we'll look at other options as well too.
I do like that idea. I think I don't want it to seem like whoever is mayor, I'm trying to think of a good fake last name, Mayor Johnson, would just like keep rolling the dice. Like, oh, I got these 3 members. Let's see what they do. I didn't like that. All right, let's try again. Like, I like some continuity too. Like, it's clear from the notes and the deliberations that this past committee was maybe thinking there was more work to do. And so moving to something where, like, similar to Kirkland, not that we have to copy every city that starts with a K, to use our running joke about cities and names. But I think that could create like a more, trying not to use buzzwords, but like a cohesive outcome where there's some continuity, and it gives us, a chance to review more often. But we're also not just like trying, like Councilman McCurd mentioned, just like throwing darts blindly. Like we do want to approach it with some continuity and thought. And that seems like a good balance to me. But.
I would just add that I like the deputy mayor's suggestion of if they are going to meet every year, it kind of is a check-in to align with the budget, because like has been discussed, this committee is free to say, budget is not in a place where we want to consider this, and we have convened for 20 minutes and peace out. Like, that has happened. I feel like maybe those every year things, that might happen, but it gives them the opportunity every year to just convene, say that. I do like the suggestion of making it more like I don't know what Kirkland's term is, but our planning commission term is 4 years. And so serving 4 years and then just checking in with them once a year, that makes a lot of sense to me, because it ultimately is in their purview to decide what they want to do. I'm hearing from our past committee that they feel like they have more work to do, and I would like to allow them to do that in a shorter time period than telling them to wait 2 years.
There seems to be still, I don't know, maybe it got answered for you, but for me, the question is also, do we start this year? Because there was a concern by Councilman McCurd, it's like, do we want to do it this year versus start at a later, maybe next year or another time? So I think, did you get the answer to that question or no?
I heard the statement. I don't know that I understand.
Oh, do you have direction from us saying to bring back a whatever we call it, to amend the code to allow it to happen once a year?
Yeah,
Starting this year.
From what I heard, and I'm looking at Kyle to make sure that I'm right, is that there are 4 council members that would like to see a draft code amendments that would include more frequent meetings.
I have a different question if you want to jump in and talk on that. I've been really interested by some of the conversation that we've had here tonight, and especially you talk about, if we go to something where, say, we appoint a salary commission for 2 years and they can do a running check-in on the off year, something like that. Is that, I guess I would love to know, just in terms of best practices, if we make this change, is the current structure that we have the best way to support that or not? And I would love your recommendations on how we can best do this, not just take exactly what we have and do it 1 year.
Yeah, that really ties into what I was going to say kind of in summary, is that I think we haven't heard one conclusive, there's a clear path for sure, but I think the various feedback that we heard gives some direction of there is a theme of wanting to continued consideration. So I think what we need to do is take a look at some of the things that you asked, look out at other options that exist, make sure that they comply, obviously, with state law. That's job number one. And then we'll try and bring a recommendation forward. It may not address all of the ideas that were brought up, but we'll try and bring something forward that addresses the most or hits the spirit of it, and then council can amend or change as we see fit, or as you see fit. So the thing that I appreciate that Matt brought up is, as I was looking at the current code, it's not just about, so the language specifically says in every even calendar year, so that obviously would need to change, but also that no member may be appointed to the salary committee for more than 2 terms. So at most, they can only do this twice. So this conversation around letting them continue, the reality is that the current language as it exists really enforces that there would be fresh voices. So we'll look at how to balance those things. That was direction from 2 years ago, where the council was continuing on some work of trying to clarify the purpose of boards and commissions, and that's why the language of this changed to committee, of not having people who are on a standing body of work limited to 90 days once every 2 years. It's hard to feel like your work, it's hard to feel connected to your purpose when it's, a quarter every 2 years. So we'll look at that too, and the changes that were made. Maybe there was some unintended consequence of the council direction at that time. I think what we have, though, is enough to come back and frame some options. I'm hearing themes of not necessarily that there would be action taken every year, but the opportunity. So our language right now the code restricts that it is every even year. So is there language that exists? Matt had a slide about what other cities do. There are some that are when they're called upon. So is there some reference of that? Who does that? How does it happen? One thing I will note, just because it is different than how we normally operate, is there is specific language around the mayor appointing members for confirmation with council, and that's consistent through all of city codes, because that does come straight from law, from state law. But the decision of calling one might be something that we can look at too, of how does that get done. So I think we got a lot of themes. It may not be something, sometimes you get a return from a study session the next week or 2 meetings from now. I don't think this is going to be one of those, but we will commit to bringing an update of where we're at. And if it's going to be more than 4 or 5 meetings, we'll tell you that too. But I think there's a little bit more work to do to take a look at this.
Thank you. And just thank you all for the good discussion. That was fruitful and useful, and I appreciated it. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Legend. Well, we won't tease you so much next time. I promise. But we appreciate you very much. All right. Next up, we have Agenda Bill 25018, the Economic Vitality Plan Update. City Manager.
So this is our second study session this evening, and this is a plan you've heard recently of a little bit of a check-in, but really as staff is working on implementation of one of the council priorities. So tonight you are going to get a study session, and staff will clarify exactly what we're looking for in this, but it really is, again, making sure that as we're we're working on finalizing a plan that it resonates with what your priority was all about. To guide you through that, I'm going to introduce once again our Deputy City Manager, Tony Call, and also welcome our Economic Development Coordinator, Ashish Joshi, to walk us through this topic and what we've heard so far. With that, I'll turn it over to the Deputy City Manager.
Thank you, City Manager Standard. And as always, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council members, it is always a pleasure to come and show some of our work with you. So we are back tonight with the Economic Vitality Plan. As City Manager Standard mentioned, we have no action this evening. What we're here to do is what I would term a check-in. So we're here to talk about, it started about 9 months ago. We've got a few more months to go. So we're here to check in on our progress. We've done background outreach. We've done a landscape analysis. We've talked to many folks. We hired an outstanding contractor called Eco Northwest, and I think Corinne is online up there. So he is here as we get ourselves, if we get questions that we need help with, he'll be here to help us with tonight. So we're really pleased with the work that has been done. And our question to you is a little bit different. We're going to take you through our work. We're going to show you what we think are the 3 themes that are coming out of the work thus far, that will then take those themes and build them into action. And our question for you is, are you good? Does it make sense? Is there a gap? Is something missing based on what you've done in the community? So it's a bit of an odd question coming at you tonight, but that's where we are. And then finally, my last slide this evening before I turn it over to Ashish Joshi is this is one of your council priorities. It is to create an economic vitality plan to enhance business growth as the very simplistic answer. So we're excited you gave us this priority. A lot of good work has happened. And so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ashish to take us through the work we've done this far.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. Also want to add another thanks to our extraordinary partnership with Eco Northwest and Corinne Salcedo's online with us. The extreme partnership that we've been able to have with Eco Northwest has allowed us to extend our capabilities to focus on those data-driven insights and work through this process. Moving into our timeline, and also acts as an agenda actually for today. Last summer, we focused on looking at Bothell through a eagle eye view, getting that high level analysis of what our economy is today. And then we then took that and went to the community and wanted to hear what the communities thought about their status and those elements. And then we combined that all together and come back with you today with the themes of all that amalgamated together. So I don't want to spoil too much, so that'll come down the line. And then we'll be back in the spring regarding the actions that are tied to each of these themes. Going down to the process, so we had 3 sources of data through last year that we produced, and then they all underwent a SOAR analysis, so that's strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. Many are familiar with the SWOT analysis, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. SOAR is more focused on 2 elements, meeting your vision and focusing on the outcomes. So we are taking those themes, and then after today, we're going to be incorporating the role of the city and economic development specifically as well, and also the capacity of the ecosystem, where it is now, where it should be. And in practical terms, that can mean, say there is a short-term implementation action, and maybe the city's role is more direct, so we can do a website update and create a front door or information or communication. Or it might be something that is more medium, longer term. So that might be something that we coordinate with partners so that we create a lot of front doors and then eventually have no wrong door. Without teasing too much, let's get into the data. Very, very high level, we operate in a regional economy. We're part of the Seattle, Bellevue, Tacoma MSA. And our place in that regional economy is that we excel in professional, scientific, and technical services, and a big portion of that is life sciences. Here you see LQ, that's the location quotient. So if 1 is our average, we're well above that. So that applies to our life sciences. And then also tying into the next point, our history in medical manufacturing, which we are known as the home of sonography. And that also leads into our largest sales tax revenue source is that goods production from that manufacturing and construction as well. Getting into the start of our process for connecting with the community, we had the first ever citywide business survey and had a 10% response rate from that survey. Usually these business surveys and any business engagement has around 5 to 8% targeted. So we did well, but there are a lot of lessons that we learned so that in the future when we engage the business community, we can expand that even further. On the qualitative side, to add toward that is where interviews to dive deeper into basically, if the survey is what they said, the qualitative interview was why. And we wanted to add into that and then also address some of the shortages. So say in our survey, we didn't hear as much from our larger businesses. So we put an additional focus to make sure that we heard from our large businesses. So that was a big key element in that. So tying into who we heard from, these are our top 6 industries that we heard from. And we wanted to make sure we got a representative sample. So we heard from all the industries that match the industries that are represented in Bothell. And then we also wanted to make sure we heard from everywhere in Bothell. So for example, here we had a large initial response from our downtown businesses. So we focused our multimodal outreach to include business walks and additional outreach to Canyon Park and Thrasher's Corner, so getting them on the board. There's an expanded version of this in your packet, so so these are just the highlights. And then what did we hear from these businesses? Overall, Bothell has a positive response, so to do business in Bothell is overall positive. And here you see also same and neutral is tied together with better and good. So in comparison with other business surveys, they're neutral and same also ties into a level of contentment. So taking away some of the headspace with businesses don't often connect with the city. So there's a lot more time to focus on them making their business the best they can make it. So that's these are the main highlights here. Tying into the priorities that the businesses mentioned. So whether it be the spaces they want to move into, to expand, the amenities to attract their employees, or the services they need to grow. A lot of these elements are a different perspective that also reflect what we've heard in other citywide initiatives, such as like the comprehensive plan last year, regarding access to amenities and support. We're fortunate that we act as an agile one city, so there's a lot of alignment with the vitality plan with our other citywide initiatives, and we continue to enjoy the fruitfulness of that partnership. Moving into the interviews, also reiterated many of those items. A lot of these elements can be also grouped to communication and awareness of these elements. So one point I want to make a note of on the 4th point in terms of distinguishing Bothell from peers, that's heavily focused on amenities. For better and worse, a lot of our businesses in the Pacific Northwest have very similar characteristics to each other. And so they all look for what makes people come to me rather than another business that is similar. And a lot of it tied to amenities. So all of this together brings us together into these three themes of focus to create that economic vitality in Bothell. And starting with building a robust small business ecosystem, building upon our status as a regional bioscience manufacturing hub, and then creating vibrant districts. So these are the pillars that we've come together with. We're going to go into detail individually coming up, but these are the three main themes that we're here today with. Going into the first theme, one element I wanted to notice is the structure of this slide. So on the left side is it's a sideways funnel of what we saw earlier. These are the three data sources that went into the creation of this theme. The middle is what was going to come next. And then we want to lead into the vision, but also our progress toward that vision. So in 2030, can we show that progress? Starting with building a robust small business ecosystem. You also in your packet that map of businesses are pretty much everywhere in the city. So how do we support them in that way? And we then heard from them that what do we need to support them in? So whether it's space, capital, just general support, networking, things like that. And then the interviews added upon that even more. So the connection between guiding through those resources, awareness, communication, that's reiterated there. And then an example of a potential action here is what we mentioned earlier regarding that no wrong door communication. Having the awareness and access to those resources is one element that could be a potential. And then we lead into in 2030, we'll be able to show progress so that we meet the council vision where our local businesses flourish. Moving into theme 2, building upon our status as a regional bioscience manufacturing hub. We saw another one of the maps that is in your packet is that our professional, scientific, and technical services businesses are clustered. And so we want to build upon that. And they also are part of the major employment of the city. So we, in our in-person feedback, we learned what it is that they are looking for in terms of their desire to get more connected in general in the community, but also we have the benefit of having 2 educational institutions here. So having a more robust structure around getting that connection is a key element. And that also leads into the potential action where regular occurring coordination to build upon that collaboration between our universities and the major anchor employers is something that is a potential there. And then leading into 2030, we want to have it so that be able to show progress toward having a business community that attracts employers and employees, and then also building support on the anchor elements so that it supports living and working in Bothell. Moving into the third theme, creating vibrant districts. So again, in that map, you saw the clusters around Canyon Park, North Creek, downtown the campus. Building upon that, when we heard from those businesses is the need for amenities and the activations, interactions. And in the in-person feedback, just building upon that even further, and the desire also to be involved in that. So it's not something that they want given, they want to be help build that. The actions, potential action here is something that you already see. We have some work on EF and G is one example here. And then expanding activations in a variety of methods so that Cannon Park, for example, with the sub-area plan implementation, it could be involved. It would be involved in that as well. And then leading to in 2030, we would have a variety of accessible and a variety of businesses in our neighborhood centers, so that anyone can enjoy these amenities for a day or for a lifetime. Moving into our next steps, we want to bring back the process again and where we are. So we're now with the themes and then moving into the next level. We'll be returning in spring with incorporated feedback from today. And then we will also be returning with actions tied to each theme. So that'll be those elements. And then last but not least, this update is just for information, but we would also like to hear from council on gaps in these themes. You all have unique and valuable experience in the community, so we want to be able to incorporate that, especially as we move forward and build actions for each of them.
Thank you, Ashish. I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
I have one question and one point of feedback. If this is something that we're going to be like using externally facing in terms of recruiting businesses, like I guess I'm concerned that we have such a specific focus on biotech, which is great. Like we should focus on that, but like there are other large industries in neighboring cities that I would love to have here as well. And like I would just love to make sure that those folks know that like we're open for business and we're right here. And you know, if you look at the list of things that the businesses say they want, like the top amenity was a variety of housing. Businesses wanted more events. I mean, we just signed a contract for 15 more of those right down here. Like we're doing a lot of the things and we're going in the direction that they want us to go. And I don't want to limit ourselves to just biotech if we're using this as a document that we're going to be sending out into the world to recruit folks to come here.
That's incredibly good feedback. Thank you. We appreciate that. I've got that on the list. I see Corinne nodding his head, so he heard you too.
Yeah, one of the things I was gonna mention is we have Ionic, which is not bioscience, but they do quantum computing. But with AI being the future, I mean, we can invite a lot more, of those types of businesses over here. And maybe we can open an Amazon branch so that Ben won't have to commute as far. How are you tying with the housing action plan, for example, then to meet with those amenities, or with the other things that are happening in community development?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to touch on the main point of that, we're in close coordination with Jason Greenspan, the Director of Community Development, is on the steering committee. So as we develop the actions, we're vetting those actions through the lens of the other work with the Housing Action Plan, the comprehensive plan that just passed, and a lot of other elements.
We talked about big businesses. I had a question about the small businesses. The majority were professional services, and there were more service-oriented, not restaurants and places where people go physically. Is that true or no? Because one of the in the agenda packet we had, they were all over the place, but I don't think we have this many physical businesses, do we?
Yeah, I'll take a quick part and then hand it to Corinne for a little bit more in depth. A big part of that is home businesses. So professional consultants.
Yes.
And a lot of elements there. They sometimes a lot of in our survey it is also self-identified. So and even when you sign a business license, it's self-identified what type of business you are. So sometimes there is a little bit of overlap. Like we had a little bit with food and beverage, with leisure and hospitality, for example. So there are sometimes cases where there's a little bit of both, but then the main thing is that there's a lot of home-based businesses. So I'll hand it over to Corinne for additional.
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, thanks again for the opportunity and for everyone for sticking around. The top 4 categories that we found of businesses that have 5 or few employers were construction-related contractors, personal care, so folks who do, whether that's therapy or pets or photos, and then cleaning, landscaping, and then consultants, architects, engineers. So the kind of folks you imagine making up that sort of diverse kind of small business makeup. Some of those were home-based. Some of those I like to call truck-based, van-based, folks who are really working in your community. And I think a lot of our goal was trying to figure out what is their growth strategy? Are they trying to get into a brick and mortar space? What do they need to hopefully grow and expand their employment within the city?
I appreciate that. Thank you. I think the larger question I have is, what do we want to also achieve as a city? Do we want to continue encouraging this kind of business, which is totally okay, because I know at least one person here who has that kind of business. But do we want to have more? For example, I'm just throwing out that, like, more physical retail. We talk about corner stores. That's something we want to do. Is that something we want to encourage more of also in the city? That's the higher level question. Like, there's what exists today, and there's the demand, and then there's like, what is the city going to supply to encourage more of that business type to be part of the city? And that's related to then how is the city going to make life better for the residents and the region around it, and then how is that going to, so there's a quality of life question, and there's a financial viability question also for the city at the next level. So that's those are the larger questions, and is that going to come out of that plan that we're going to be talking about in the spring?
I'll take a stab at this one, if that's okay with you, Deputy Mayor. So I think the good news is that you actually all gave us quite clear direction in your council vision. So what this plan's foundation was, and I could have spent more time on this earlier to say it out loud, is that it was kind of a balanced vision of what you asked for as from economic vitality. Strategies to attract and retain Bothell resident-owned businesses, identify neighborhoods with potential economic generators, strategies that will bring us abundant small commercial, and strategies that will retain and attract large and medium employers. So I think what you were asking us for was a kind of a broad look at a full ecosystem of businesses that would have a balance across all options so that Bothell's open for everyone is how we interpreted that. Is that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
I'm not going to go against our vision. We have to do another offsite, then it's not going to be good.
I hadn't thought of that, sir, but you're right. You're right. So I think, so as a foundation for this plan, we really came at it from the scope of work from the council vision itself.
Cool. Thank you. Related, you mentioned a lot of EFG, so that's triggered in my mind the question. The question is like, where are we with that? Just if there's an update.
Yeah, I can give a quick update. We have construction equipment on there right now, and a lot of the sheds, pop shops, are already constructed and basically have to be plopped on and put back on, and we just have to work on the foundations and soil, really. So yeah, we're moving fast. We should have an exact date. All of that is completed pretty soon, and also regarding the applications down the line as well.
So I think our contracts with Lot E, F, and G are real close to ending, so the work needs to get done pretty quickly, or we're going to have to extend contracts. So I think we're within the next week or so is where I believe we are.
I know it's public and everybody can see this, but I don't know if I want to extend the contract.
I'm going to jump in here with a few questions and comments, and hopefully I'll be able to read my writing and not extend the torture for you all. On On page 51, we were I just wanted to make a comment that I'm interested in an economic generator that can build resiliency not only in the city, but with the districts, but also within the neighborhoods. And I realize and I understand that that is generated by somebody who wants to open up a business. I can't wave a magic wand and say, I want this there and that there, and those businesses magically appear. Somebody has to want to own and be committed to it. So I know that's not within the scope of what we're doing here. On page 52, and I think it's also on the last sentence on page 52, challenges making it difficult to distinguish Bothell from peer competitive pressures. My question is, so the pressures that we're feeling here in Bothell is what they're feeling everywhere else around us? Is that what is being said? Okay. So in my mind, that makes it more difficult for us to fix on our end if everybody's feeling it. I don't know if that's accurate or not. I appreciate the 3 themes that you came up with on, I think you went over it here on the slides, and I think it's on page 53. On the second one, where Bothell is a regional bioscience manufacturing, and Deputy Mayor, somebody just mentioned this. I also have a similar question, can we encourage variations of manufacturing, or is just the landscape of where these businesses are, it just kind of has to stay within there? In other words, is there more room for people within the districts to have a diversity in manufacturing? That was just a thought that I threw out there. And then on page 55, what does business districts provide that cannot be provided in smaller spread out places? Page 55, I'm trying to figure out. Oh, it's point 3, commercial space, last point, many small retail spaces available in downtown and other retail areas, but very few in business districts. So in other words, can the business districts support retail, or what they're able to do, is that just very specific because of the location and where they're at? And I think, which leads to another question, is I think that in your presentation that was made, that business districts talked about how they'd like to help build business districts. Does that include the retail that they want to see there, the childcare, the things that they identified?
Yeah, I'll quickly take care of the top line of that. Okay. Yes, for the second part, it does include a lot of the elements, and a lot of it is the communication around that. And the other element in terms of the where the spaces are available, part of that is because there's certain areas that we're fortunate that we have some retail in our office districts, but as future developments go, there may be more of a mix. And that's a little bit more determined. I'll hand it to Corinne for a little bit more detail on that one.
I was just going to interject. I think I saw in the Canyon Park sub-area plan making it more comprehensive neighborhood. Is that where you were going, Corinne?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, you're one step ahead of me. I think luckily what Jason's doing, and I think you all have already started to move forward with, is allowing a little more flexibility into some of those areas that used to be very single use and focused just on office and some flex employment. I think if you reduce some of those barriers, that's one step in allowing people to try different things in those areas, whether that's a coffee shop. You're obviously already starting to see some multifamily in those areas, and that seems to be some of what we heard in this effort was, hey, I'd like our places of employment to feel more vibrant and to have some of those mixed uses.
Right, I think your operative word there is mixed use, because then that allows for the flexibility.
Yeah.
I have one other question, and I didn't write the page number down. The one place I didn't write a page number down. The professional and scientific tech services employment has contracted by 25% since 2012. And my question was, why is that? Is that because Seattle Times closed?
So the wording on that, I guess, I think is a little misleading. The location quotient has gone down, which means your concentration compared to the rest of the country has gone down. That can also be just other areas are gaining more of that kind of employment than Bothell did in that same period.
Okay, that's
So a little bit of that is just the shifting of the times, and I can double check. I don't think that's actually that you're losing that many jobs in that profession. I think it's more that other places may have gained them faster, if that makes sense.
It's a superb answer, and I thank you for it, because I was, my next part of that question was going to be comparing, if we were to look at trends from 2012, what would we expect it to be where we are here in 2025? And you just answered that, because things are happening around us and things are shifting.
Yeah, the other, I guess you could argue, silver lining there is it might show your city is diversifying, and it sort of shows you may have lack of, instead of having a strong concentration just in that, you may just be having more people of different kinds of professions.
I like that thought. I want to go with that one. Thank you.
These are great points. Thank you.
You mentioned sonography manufacturing. I'm curious, do we make more in sales tax on that than we do from our big box stores like Home Depot and Fred Meyer? Do you know?
Go ahead, Corinne.
I unfortunately I don't have a good answer for that one. I can dig into it, but I don't currently have an answer.
Okay. I was just curious, since it was mentioned at the top. I know they do a lot of scientific advancement there in Canyon Park, and we've fortunately got to experience that. They seek volunteers, so I was just curious if it's manufactured there, do we receive sales tax from that, or if it's from their corporate offices in whatever other state?
Sales tax in the state of Washington is destination-based, right? So it is where the product gets delivered. So in this case, I think what the message is that it's not the everyday consumer like you and I going and having our packages delivered to our front door, or we're going to go pick up the goods at the big box store, whichever one you choose from. It's more of the manufacturing that's occurring in Canyon Park is getting a lot of stuff to build whatever they're building up there. And there's I've toured some of them, they're building some really cool stuff up there.
Okay.
But so destination-based sales tax, as it comes here.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
It's not, we have a lot of control over how much we spend, but the big bucks are being spent up in the places that are doing manufacturing.
Okay,
Right.
that makes sense. I was going to ask the same question. I'm just thinking about a number of us took a tour of IonQ.
Yes.
I think it was last year.
Yes.
Depending upon who you listen to, quantum could be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years in the future. Just hypothesizing. So if they're manufacturing here, that equipment is very expensive. So we could potentially, if they continue to do well, continue to grow, we could see a great deal of sales tax revenue in the future if we can retain them here during that growth.
If their manufacturing system continues to stay here, I think that's the key.
Okay. Are we looking at that, like with the larger businesses? How do we retain them? How do we make sure there's spaces for them to grow? I know a lot of biotechs have been acquired. I think 5 biotechs have been acquired in the last 20 years here, Immunex, and most recent being CGen. And CGen, fortunately, I was worried they were going to, roll it back to headquarters, but they've seemed to keep expanding, which is great. I was curious, are we doing anything to try to retain them here?
So I think that's kind of one of the points the mayor brought up earlier, and I think it's a gap in our theme here that says I think we've maybe missed a piece of it's not just the regional bioscience manufacturing hub, it's also how are we retaining all big businesses and how are we saying that Bothell is open for business. So I think that's a really good piece of feedback that I'm collecting from this table, that as Corinne and Ashish continue to move forward, that's going to be part of that thinking.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Question on the satisfaction scores among the different segments. Do we see different scores among like restaurants versus home-based businesses versus office-based businesses?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, short answer is
Oh,
yeah.
go ahead, Grant.
Okay. There's actually behind all this there's quite a bit of data. We didn't want to overwhelm you in this conversation, but we're happy to supply that. There are some nuanced differences between different industries, but there was a very common threads when it comes to things like employee housing costs. That was a common challenge that we heard a lot on, and then sort of the actual cost on the rental rates as well for them. So that was I don't know if Sheets, you had another point to throw in.
That was perfect. The only other element is that we're going to have a way to, we're going to have the whole dashboard of this, the survey results, and that'll include managing by crosstabs and yeah.
Okay, great. I think a lot of us are into food here, and just was hoping that the restaurants were feeling like they were getting the business that they expected. I think we've got some unique and great restaurants here, and it's nice to be living in a city where you don't have to leave the city to go find a good restaurant. You can usually find something that is of the variety you're looking for right here. So just want to make sure we're continuing to get feedback from those restaurants. I've talked to some other businesses. One of them, like a personal care haircut service, they actually had to move out of Canyon Park and they moved to Kenmore because they found a more reasonable rent there. It was too difficult to afford Canyon Park, which is unfortunate. It was a solo entrepreneur that she took the space out and she thought there would be demand, but because of where it was located, it was difficult to attract clients. And even with another place up the street closing down, naturally you'd think that she would attract those clients because they're pretty close by, but that didn't materialize. So I just want to make sure we're looking at all of our small businesses as well and making sure that they're finding those spaces that are affordable. I know it's getting harder and harder with the rising cost of property and insurances and things like that, but if we could do that, I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, we have some interesting data along those lines that we're happy to share.
Okay, I'd love to see it. Do we know what our risk is of losing large employers?
I don't think we would know that. I think that's really hang on a sec, Corinne. I think the reality is, when we look at our survey data, we are in one big ecosystem here of the Puget Sound region. So when we're thinking about our big employers, we're thinking about the fact that they need manufacturing space, they need big bay space, they need a variety of things that I'm not sure all other cities have available to them right now.
Sure.
So is there a risk? Sure. I think anybody can make a choice. We've seen very large businesses in the Pacific Northwest choose to move their headquarters across the country, right? So we've seen people their own personal choice. I'm not sure we would know if there's a quote-unquote risk. I think the goal is if there is a risk, we're also doing things that would incorporate other businesses to come into town. Okay. So I think we have to think about it from a give and take, because of course we don't have the authority to say,
yep,
that's not part of our role.
I haven't seen a lot leave. I've seen more come
Yeah.
or come temporarily if they need more space from, like Boeing was in the Canyon Park Business Park for a while and then they left, and I think Lyle's in there now. And
somebody comes in, yeah, it's ebb and flow.
yeah, okay.
So you hope over time the ebb and flow grows more than the downside, but that's part of our job, is to make sure we're saying we're open for business.
Great. I think, so one more question. Oh, no, I think that was it. I love that we're working on this. I think we talk a lot about housing, but businesses are a vital part of that. Mm-hmm. Having good jobs, well-paying jobs, and then there's also the feedback, the cycle of they're bringing people here to work. There's tax revenue coming in. There's opportunities to support them. There's opportunities for them to support us with parks and sponsorships and things like that. And the more we can understand what their needs are and help find solutions and build those relationships, I think the better off we are as a community. And building the beloved community includes businesses as well. So
it does.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mankey. I do believe, I used to work with a person who said it was kind of like a bike flywheel. When the synergy of the flywheel starts turning, it builds all parts of the community. So thank you for that message. I appreciate it.
I'm jumping in. This is really interesting to me. I have a lot of questions, and I don't 100% know which ones are possible. So first question, I know in the comp plan, we had a table of the businesses that employ the most people in Bothell. And in this, we had the stats, 94% of people who live here commute elsewhere, 91% of people who work here commute from elsewhere. Is there any way to get the number of, not the businesses that, basically the businesses that have employees that have the highest amount of their employees who live in the city, like the businesses that have jobs that let you afford to live here, where you can kind of work here and afford to live here, and like what industries are they in, like what are the jobs we have that sustain a life in Bothell, right? Like with the housing we have and all that. And I know we're active, we have plans and plans and plans that we're developing to like change that, but I can't think off the top of my head how to get that data without like a lot of marrying of like the census and all kinds of stuff. But if it's possible, I feel like that would be fascinating to know.
So I'll put it on the list.
That's a start.
I'll put it on the list. I don't know, in listening to your question, how accessible being able to do that would be. We might be able to talk about different types of jobs based on what companies do, but I'm not sure we'd be able to ever say there's this many of these things. So
Yeah.
we might get some general statements that we might use, but I'm not sure much farther than that. We'll put it on the list. I'm willing to have a conversation around it. Well, yeah.
Well, I'd love to find, going to, especially Snohomish County based like presentations and stuff, there's a lot of education through like Edmonds College and Everett Community College about like jobs that you can get trained for in your community and then live in your community and do. And, it's a living wage. You can raise a family on it. Like whatever that is for Bothell, I would love to see some kind of synergies there. And I know we've seen that or heard about it from like IonQ from our tour there. But the flip side of all this too is I like other people said, I don't want us to focus too much on one industry or one, especially not one company. I feel like I talked about my parents talking about the Seattle subway that never happened in the 80s. There's also my parents talking about when Boeing was having trouble in the 70s or 80s, sometime before I was born. I don't want us to be so dependent on an industry that if it goes somewhere or doesn't work out, like, we're having that kind of struggle. I think my understanding is we got pretty lucky during COVID in that we thought there'd be a big revenue drop, but we saw a lot of sales tax come in from Amanda shopping at home while stressed out, and maybe some other people, but I know I was a big part of it. And so I want us to be sure we have like a broad base. And then, Ben, you got me with talking about, I know which haircut place you're talking about. And what I noted there, because that's where my dad and my brother get their haircuts. And the rent was going to be raised too high, so the owner moved. And then it was vacant for a long time. And I think we see that all over the city where it's like they don't want what the person who was there could pay in rent, but then they don't lease to anybody for months and months. And I would love to understand that and find a way to encourage that we have occupied commercial spaces. It's not like we have a ton to be having them empty when they could be, a place to get a smoothie or whatever. That's just my current wish list. But I think the more we can prevent vacant commercial space, the better. And I don't know, obviously, once we know why, I'd want to know what levers we can pull to help with that. But I think about that, like this is Mill Creek, but there was a big university bookstore that got their rent raised and they left, and it was empty for like years and years and years. Like I think I had a baby, he learned to like walk and talk and go to school before there was something else in that building. So it's kind of surprising. So yeah, this is super exciting. I think those are the rest of my random questions, but like however we can encourage, especially just more people who aren't having to commute a long time. I will spare you my full speech about how that really impacts like all of us when we have families that like don't get to see like their parents because they're commuting like 3 hours a day. Like that stinks. Whatever we can do to help Bothell families not deal with that would be awesome.
I appreciate the feedback. Yes.
Related to her first question, the 91% or 94, how did we arrive at those numbers if we don't know which businesses have
I
what?
believe we used placer data. Corinne, can you talk about how we got to the original 91%?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That,
I think we did.
that's actually census data. And so those, there's some extrapolation, but that's generally what's called ACS, the sort of ongoing censuses that are taken, and then they're able to, tell you kind of how many people, again, commute out and for how long. The placer data we can also layer on top of that, where that's sort of cell phones and trying to figure out how many people are coming from where, so we can kind of get a little bit of layering. But it's not uncommon. I mean, for a lot of the cities in this region, you're seeing usually over 85% of people leaving to go to work, and a similar number of people coming into your city. So it's, I agree that, we'll try and see what are some approaches that can bring that number down, but I'll just say it's not uncommon.
I have one last thing. We talked about the survey results and being able to slice them. I would love to be able to know by industry, but then like by neighborhood and like, okay, is it restaurants in Canyon Park or downtown or, yeah.
We can absolutely do that. I think the challenge is that we're talking about 215 responses, which is 10%, a great number, no doubt. But once you start slicing and dicing too far down, you're talking about one or two businesses with a response. So I would encourage you to do that. I have no issues, but also be thoughtful about kind of the validity of the voice.
No, I rely on you to ground us, and I appreciate that. No,
thank you. I appreciate you, Councilmember Dodd.
One other thing tied with that is that businesses self-identified where they are. So it would partially learn how many businesses know they're in Canyon Park. And, Thatcher's Corner you can't miss. But so there's that element as well. But we do have that as part of one of the crosstabs.
I'll just also add that one of the reasons we went out and talked to a lot of businesses was to dig into some of these, I think, topics that you all are bringing up. We asked, I think, almost every business, what about your employees? Can they live in the city? What's their challenges? So I think a lot of the quotes that we get that, it's also, I think, helpful to look at. Not that you all don't speak with people every day. They give you their input, but a lot of these were the themes that I think we were also trying to just ask people what they saw with their own businesses, with their own employees.
I've been so busy writing that I haven't been able to speak up, and I almost missed my opportunity again. Unfortunately, my thoughts and my questions are kind of all over the place, and I'm very sorry. I tried to organize them. It's not going to happen. So I guess to the question about more data, yes, please, always. Love data. Bring it on. Some particular data points that I'm interested in are this is sort of related to Councilmember Dodd's question, but how many workers say that they want to live in Bothell but face barriers to living in Bothell? I think we have some of that through the comprehensive plan, but I think that they articulate the reasons really well within the survey. We can see, there needs to be a range of housing options. There needs to be childcare. Commuting is a challenge. Transportation, right? And I think that section, especially around the amenities, requests, connects really well into the rest of our vision and priorities, because we're doing that for our current residents already, knowing that as we do that, people will want to live in Bothell and benefit from that as well, and want to, join us here. And then when I'm looking at the services needed portion of the presentation, slide 10, it looks like, most of those I feel like are sort of in process. with an asterisk on the affordable commercial space, which I will get to. But I just want to do a shout out to our, is it 425 business partnership that you guys have been doing? Like she's made it happen. We have co-working, networking, like the co-working space here at City Hall a couple times a month. We have the chamber, we have, the small businesses workshops about how to like build your business. And I feel like if they're showing up in the survey as we need this, then my question is, how do we get people connected to the services programs that we already have that are already doing this? And how do we like help empower them with that information? And do you feel like, surveys are fun and interesting because sometimes people learn from the survey and their behavior changes because they took the survey. So do you know if you've seen any of that?
I'm not sure we would have seen that yet.
Okay.
But I do think this is really good fodder for as we talk about the small, robust business system, that we add this as actions. How do we create those? Do we have a web page that does enough? How do we think about that? I think that falls into those actions. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And on the communication side and awareness of resources, in some of the interviews, there were mentions of needs that for a service that already exists. So as communication has been so stretched out and split up into so many factors, the way people arrive at information is so different compared to how it used to be. So a little bit what we talked about earlier, the no wrong door, so that eventually creating so many doors that eventually someone will have to walk through a door is a goal.
Yeah. All right. I'm glad you're working on that. And thank you for kind of thinking of that as you're helping build those connections. Other connections that I think we've kind of talked around here tonight is making sure that our local colleges are connected to job sources here in Bothell, so that, students who want to stay here can find work here, and really, encouraging those connections between internships and, entry-level jobs and like job fairs, that kind of thing, which then leads me to another question, because I'm remembering back to a time in Bothell's history where there was concerted effort and focus on building the biotech corridor here in Bothell. And has that focus remained consistent since that time? Or like, have we possibly lost focus on building that as a district? Like, did we say we built that, it's done, check, now they're just going to exist and do their thing? Or have we looked at it and said, we have built something that is thriving here. How do we attract more, makers, biotech companies to this space? Do we have space for them? How are we continuing to maintain that focus so we can build on that success?
I think it's a great question. I think something that we can observe on. One thing that I'll share just as kind of an observation data point is that in speaking with leadership at some of the biotech firms that we do have, it's almost like a generational story of how each and every time they introduce themselves and why they chose to locate their company that they started there, they'll talk about how they've been in the same office park for 40 years or for their entire career. It's a really interesting phenomenon of there's a connection between the people who have risen up through the organizations that currently exist. And then when they think about if they go off to go invest and start their own company, when they think about where are they going to be, they stay in North Creek, they stay in Canyon Park. And it's a really interesting phenomenon. I think one of the things that coming out of this survey that we have an opportunity to do is think about how do we think then about that next generation of, are there opportunities, are there employees who, as they are rising up in their profession and their current companies, and they have an idea of something that they want to do, whatever sector it would be, will they have that same feeling of, and the place I need to do it is the place that I've been coming to work my entire career. So it's an interesting thing, and I think something that we can keep focused on in the next steps of this plan, but also in the years to come. So I love the thinking of it, and I don't know if we have a solid answer of it, but that is a story that I hear over and over again that I wanted to share with you.
Cool. And so sometimes those kinds of stories can show that something's self-sustaining. And if it's self-sustaining, then great. But I just want to make sure that we haven't like lost with, like changes in administration at the city, like, the people responsible for making that happen aren't necessarily here anymore. So how are we like maintaining those relationships? Okay. What else do I have here? Some of the common challenges that workers face, we talked about housing costs, child care locations. Okay, I can start checking stuff off. Great. Also, some of the like amenities and services that the survey requested, we've sort of mentioned, that we're doing more events in the city. Have we heard feedback from the, because surveys sometimes can assume that like we haven't done anything. And so you feel like there's like a false premise of we started from nothing, even though there is a lot here already. So I'd love to hear, have we heard feedback from these same businesses on our local events? Do they know about the summer events coming up? How do they feel about that? Even like there's a request in here for more physical locations for business that are, I see widely distributed here as part of a landscape. Like they already are widely distributed, but there's an interest in the survey data of perhaps neighborhood retail, and our businesses commenting on those types of like decisions that we're making here as a body and how those decisions impact them or like help their prospects.
That's a really good question. We'll have to do some research to get back to you, but my initial response would be most businesses aren't as focused on what the city is doing. It usually requires us to reach out to businesses to let them know, hey, we're here to help, versus coming in the door saying, can you help us? So I think it's the reverse of what we would see from like people who live here. They're much more apt to, you're going to doorbell, be connected into the city. So I think it's the inverse for businesses. Let us do some thinking and noodling around what your comments are and see how that might fit into some actions that would bring that to a reality. I need to think about that a little bit, but I think there's a path forward. We just need to do some thinking on it.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's so, sort of the direction of my comments right now is how do we connect local businesses to current and existing efforts? That's always kind of the first step, I think, for me is what does exist and how can we help people plug into what exists? And then and the next phase is how do we create what doesn't yet exist, and build on, and as well as build on, making sure that we're filling in gaps and removing barriers. So I do want to talk about gaps and barriers next. Okay. So I see a demand for commercial spaces. Before I even ran for office, this is what I was hearing from Bothell businesses, is that there needs to be more retail, there needs to be commercial spaces. I still hear people say, we lost affordable commercial space when Country Village left. And have we created anything to fill that gap? And how do we do that? I think this is somehow related here to the flex. Can you please define flex buildings for me so I don't go off on something with the wrong understanding?
So in a sense, flex use is a multi-use. So you can maybe have an office, but also industrial in the building, but you also can adapt it so that you can say make it more fully office and then less industrial or the opposite.
Yeah, and according to the landscape analysis, we kind of have a lot of that already here. Are businesses able to imagine themselves in those spaces? And what's their capacity? Like, are they full? Are they in high demand? Sometimes it just, if you don't know that it applies to you, then you don't benefit from it, right? So I think that's more of a connection piece. How do we connect people to the flex buildings that exist so that those spaces are filled up? And is there a barrier with like affordability, whatever that might be for them? And then really just, I can't underemphasize the importance of affordable commercial space. Like over and over again, that's what I hear from entrepreneurs, people who want to get started, how, we have a number of kind of famous stories in the city of businesses that we have lost to other cities because affordable commercial space didn't exist for them, or even the commercial space didn't exist for them. And that requires, I think, building, but I think also building intentionally too. Like, I love that we have the pop shops. That was an intentional project to bring a certain kind of business into our community. And not only did we do that for, the initial 4, we have 4 new ones, and we're building more. Like, that's really cool to see that it's growing and it's evolving in time. But there's, I think, more for us to do there. And so, hold on. I think the businesses are like right on though. Like they get it. They kind of know what they need, like placemaking in the neighborhood centers. One question I have here is have we as the city or they as businesses identified the districts where like business should exist or does exist and want to build?
Our comprehensive plan does have business generation, I'm not sure I can call them districts, but I can call them locations, I think would be an appropriate term. I think our comprehensive plan does that. I'm not sure. And when Corinne and Tony and Ashish meet later tomorrow or the next day, we can talk a little bit more if we have other business generating districts that need to be identified. But I know the comp plan did quite a bit of that work.
Yeah, and that relates to our economic generators from the vision, right? Like, and when we want to take action, I think one of the initial steps in that is identify where those locations are, and work with those businesses. Okay, I love that there are, like, they know. They're really, really clued in, I can tell. Another question I have, I'm getting to the end, I promise. Did anybody bring up impact fees when talking about permitting and zoning as a barrier?
Corinne, do you got any impact fees? I don't remember it, but did you? I don't remember that coming up.
No, it's a good question. I don't think so. There was some, talk around permitting. That's usually around time and sort of the expectations there. But yeah, short answer is no.
I got an okay from Jenny to sneak in here. I think when impact fees or change of use fees or whatever are prohibitive, we don't end up seeing a business, so there's nobody to talk to. So however someone finds out their fee, and then I'm guessing by permit, right? If there's permits that were abandoned, like maybe we could take a look at that. Because we all have, I think, at least one story from a constituent, and I would just love to get more data there. And then we're not picking on this person or that person. It's like when anyway, you get it. Thank you.
It'd be exciting to kind of actually look into that data point. One sort of related anecdote we had was someone who wanted to open up a childcare center in kind of a retail space, and they eventually abandoned that effort. They're a home-based childcare business just because of the challenges with retrofitting that space, whether that was cost, whether that was landlord who said, I don't want to have separate bathrooms and these other kind of improvements. So there are definitely barriers that we heard about in terms of folks starting businesses and some of the physical constraints and the cost constraints.
We heard from somebody recently who came and said they're trying to move their business down the street. Was their impact fee because they were changing locations, or because at the new location they were also trying to do something down below?
I remember that customer. Let me go back and check with utilities on the exact answer. I think that's probably our best approach than me taking a guess. Okay. I think that's a bad idea.
Okay. If we are charging those fees for just somebody moving the same business I don't know, 3, 4, 5 blocks, same area, like that seems wrong to me, and like we're prohibiting people from growing and changing. And this person, it sounds like, I don't know the full story, but from what they said, they're trying to invest and do something new as well down below. And if we can encourage that, I think that's awesome.
It was
We can get back to you.
a bit of a change of use, so they want to move an existing chiropractic practice.
That's right.
And start a pizza and pinball restaurant. I might be minimizing, but yeah, so it's, the change of use seems to get people a lot, and
Yeah,
I
it
would
does.
love to dig into that, but that's a different study
That's a
session
different
that we
study
don't have
session.
time for
That's a
today.
different
But
study
yeah.
session.
I was
I
curious
would-
if the change
I
of
would-
use was for just for the downstairs, like pinball and pizza, or if it was for the whole thing.
I promise to check into it and get you an answer back.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, I actually think I am tapped out on questions. So thank you for your answers, for your thought, and I hope from all of this you feel guidance. You feel like you've been guided.
We actually got a lot out of tonight's conversation. I think we heard a lot of good things, and I think it will play into how we build the next iteration. We'll be back in the springtime, correct? We're back in the springtime, and I don't know exactly when in the spring. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Karsten, should we adjourn? All right, adjourn.
He's been ready to go.